At this time, I would like to call the May 21st, 2026 Des Moines City Council meeting to order, and I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, please let the record show we have 6 council members here present, but Councilmember Desmoni is absent. She emailed me and let me know that she is traveling. Is there a motion to excuse?
I move to excuse Councilmember Desmoni.
Okay. Second to Councilmember Nutting. All those in favor? That's 6-0. She is excused. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to a proclamation, which I have here. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure.
Point of order, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You need to take a vote and for someone to approve.
You're right. Go ahead.
I move to approve the proclamation recognizing the week of May 17th May 17th through May 23rd, 2026 as National Public Works Week.
Second goes to Councilmember Steinmetz. All in favor? That's 6-0. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Councilmember Nutting. All right. The motion passes. Now, back to where I was. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Des Moines, and whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Des Moines to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and the public works programs in their respective communities, and whereas the year 2026 marks the 66th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association. Now, therefore, the Des Moines City Council hereby proclaims the week of May 17 through 23, 2026, as National Public Works Week, and the Council encourages all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, our safety, and advancing the quality of life for all. Signed on this day of May 2026 by Yoshiko Grace Matsui, Mayor. All right. I have Mike here to
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Mike Slevin, Public Works Director for the City of Des Moines. I would like to thank you, Mayor and Council, for recognizing American Public Works Association's National Public Works Week. The 2026 motto, which is on the screen here in front of you, is rooted in service, powered by community. As you are aware, our small public works team of 42 personnel operates 24/7 to support the citizens of our community with all things public works, from snow plowing and de-icing in the cold winter wet months to barricading for high king tides during our storms, emergency tree removal after wind events, maintaining our roads and storm systems on a daily basis, facilities and fleet maintenance capital projects such as the Redondo Pier, which we recently just are getting going, Parks maintenance, and the list goes on and on. There's literally thousands of tasks we do every year for our citizens, and a lot of them are unseen, but they're necessary for safety and for our public. Your team supports the city every day so that the people are safe, and your team is service-oriented, powered by the community spirit that defines Des Moines. Just a really, like a little short thing. I know the mayor, you were there, but like the citizens of Redondo baked us cookies the other day. I mean, those types of little efforts that the community supports our public works teams with when we're out in this field and they come out and talk to us and say hello, it's what keeps us going. And so I just want to thank you for recognizing us, and we look forward for 2027 and supporting the community for the next year.
All right. Now is the time for correspondence from the public. Is there any correspondence not previously received by the council?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll move on to comments from the public. Now is time for comments from the public. We ask that you keep your comments respectful. When I call your name, please come up to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes as an individual, 5 minutes as an organization. Please state your name and city of residence. First, I have Jamie Wagner from the Des Moines Farmers Market.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Jamie Wagner, and I'm the Vice President of the Des Moines Farmers Market Board. This year marks the 21st season of the Des Moines Waterfront Farmers Market. For over 20 years, the market has served as a community gathering place that provides access to fresh produce, local foods, handmade goods, and opportunities for small businesses and entrepreneurs to grow. Over the years, the market has also helped showcase our beautiful marina and waterfront to thousands of visitors every summer. What began as a small local market has grown into a true community destination that supports local business, brings people together, and adds energy to our waterfront. Last season, we conducted several DOT visitor surveys over multiple market weekends to better understand who attends our market and why they come. When guests were asked what brings them to the market, the top answers were 36% came for fresh produce, 20% came for the baked goods, and 19% said live music and the overall market experience. When asked where visitors came from, 43% are from Des Moines, 34% came from neighboring communities including Burien, SeaTac, Normandy Park, Federal Way, and Kent, and 22% said they were from outside of those areas. When asked how frequently they attend, 36% come weekly, 32% said they come monthly, 21% said it was their very first time, and 20% said that they come every single week. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the Des Moines Waterfront Farmers Market has become both an important community resource and a regional draw. People rely on us not only for access to fresh food, but also for connection, entertainment, and a sense of community. Every weekend during the summer, the market brings visitors into Des Moines and helps showcase our marina and waterfront to people from all over the region. Most importantly, it shows that after more than 20 years, the the market continues to thrive and serve the community in meaningful ways. We truly value our partnership with the City of Des Moines, and we appreciate the opportunity to continue bringing this event to our city each year. As many of you know, the market will look a little different this season due to the ongoing construction impacts. There have certainly been some challenges, but we have been working closely with city staff to adjust the layout and ensure that the market can continue to operate successfully this summer. We are confident we can successfully navigate this season and look forward to showcasing a beautiful market alongside the completed stairs next year. On behalf of our president, Travis DeNevers, the entire market board, our market manager, vendors, and the community, thank you to the city council, city staff, and marina staff for supporting the Des Moines Waterfront Farmers Market for more than 2 decades. We are proud to continue providing access to fresh food, supporting local businesses, and creating a place where people can gather and enjoy our waterfront community, and we hope to continue to do so for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernice Warren.
My name is Bernice Warren. I live on 223rd, 30th Avenue South. I have to say it is my pleasure to stand before you this evening, Mayor, City Council members, and supporting staff. I am here to thank you for serving the City of Des Moines. It is a task, and you took it on. I want you to know that you are being prayed for every day. I pray for wisdom, I pray for discernment, and I pray for safety for each of you. Safety is the reason I'm here today. We want to keep our children safe on 30th Avenue South. There is a sign at the end of the road that says dead end. People don't read it. They rush on down. We need to slow them down. Bring those bumps that you're going to put on 224, bring them on down to 223rd. We need a sign that says no parking. Big rigs, they think that's a perfect street to park on. No, no, no. You know what the result is? The children are forced to walk in the street. There is no designated place for them to walk. Poor training on our part, the City of Des Moines. We want kids to know, walk in the designated places. A lot of kids, and the reason there are a lot of kids, we have a park at the end of our street, our neighborhood park, and I tell you the kids are coming, and they're really going to come when they finish that park because they've told us that better things are coming. So let's be ready. Let's keep our children safe. I'm not talking about my children. Mine are grown. I'm not even talking about my grands. They don't live in the city. I'm talking about the children of the City of Des Moines, our children. Do all we can to keep them safe. Please, I've made this appeal before in various council meetings, but I'm coming before the full council, and I'm trusting. Consider the words I'm sharing. Let's keep our children safe. Put the signs up, put the bumper stickers, put the light around dead end, and we'll be good to go. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, I have Chris D.
My name is Chris Della Rosa, resident of Des Moines. I'm here to talk about flock cameras. Tonight, we're going to hear an update from the Chief of Police. We're most likely going to hear assurances that our data is secure, that everything is aligned, and that we have until 2027 to implement the state's new regulation under SB 6002. I'm asking the council members to not accept a generic assurance. Ask him about the 5 cameras near the protected areas and explain how they square with the law. If he feels that they are not in violation, then ask, we want to see proof. Ask him, will the cameras in violation of the law be shut down, and how will we know? We can't just take your word. We'd like to see proof. Ask him to explain why a resident requested for a vendor contract of flock and the audit logs is taking so long to get delivered to that person. Ask him to explain to us if our surrounding cities and cities in other states have found the need to pause or shut down their flock cameras, because they couldn't guarantee they are operating within the current law, what makes Des Moines so special.
Thank you. Next, I have Judy.
As most of you know, my name is Judy Grandy, and I live in Des Moines. And I'm here to request that the City Council vote to cancel the flock safety contract and remove the 15 flock safety cameras. The data is their data, not our data. The flock safety website says, with billions of monthly plate reads, Flock connects communities, businesses, and law enforcement in a shared network built to solve crime. Evidence has shown that crimes go down, not with surveillance, but when people have access to stable income, housing, and health care. The Des Moines Police Department does not have control of the roughly 235,000 videos taken every 30 days. Recently, I talked about Peter Thiel, the chairman of Palantir, who is compiling the DOJ stolen data into one big database. He also owns a lot of flock safety shares. 2 days ago, Newsweek wrote that the FBI is going to pay millions of dollars to get access to ALPR, automated license plate reader data. Also, flock safety's emphasis is on data, not security, which is why their data can be easily hacked. Flock safety states that they delete data after 30 days, or now 21 days with the new state bill 6002. My question about that is, what data are they deleting? Is it just the original video, or is it the original video and all data derived from that video? At the UWCHR Spring Symposium 2026 about immigration enforcement in the Pacific Northwest, ALPR data is being used to help CBP and ICE find people. It was noted that there can be 10 to 30% error rate in the reading of ALPR data. Zeros and O's are mixed up. 2s look like 6s and vice versa. Before an error is realized, people in a vehicle incorrectly tagged as stolen can be pulled over and arrested. They are released after being traumatized. Crimes were solved before ALPR technology. Crimes will still be solved after ALPR technology is tossed aside. I am here to support everyone's privacy, including people who don't realize how much they're giving up. City Council members, I urge you to please vote to end the flock safety contract and remove every flock camera. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Christy?
Hello, you guys know me. Thank you again for allowing us to speak. I don't have anything prepared today. I just came from a late meeting at work, and I just feel very passionately about protecting our community. And we go to other city council meetings in Tukwila. They feel very different than this, and it makes me a little bit sad. Like, I feel like I know that a lot of people don't agree with me right here, and that's okay. But it's just a lot more welcoming in other cities. So we simply want to protect our community and don't want mass surveillance. And we don't want flock cameras. And we know that some are out of compliance with 6002. And we just want fairness for our community. And we don't want our community kidnapped. So please consider pausing, like all of the surrounding cities. Please consider pausing flock cameras. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to regional committee reports, we're currently running a committee of the whole meeting, but however, council members do serve regionally on other committees. Do any council members have any items of interest to the public or the council? Councilmember Oxiger.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. The skateboard, and that's South King Area Transportation Board met this last week and got an update on the upcoming FIFA World Cup presentation that's going to be going on between June 15th and July 6th. And it was an update from everything from WashDOT to SDOT to Sound Transit, Metro, and anybody having to do with transportation. And it was an hour and 30-minute long presentation, and I'm going to try and distill it down to a few words. During the month-long FIFA World Cup events here, the advice is if you're going anywhere near downtown or anything, and you're planning on going in your own vehicle, don't. They're urging everybody to take the public transit because they're running extra trains. There will be large sections down in the stadium districts that are going to be cordoned off. It'll be pedestrian only, and it's going to be serious enough. They're expecting 750,000 visitors to the region. It's going to be serious enough that they're actually shutting down construction jobs all over the state to keep the roads open and everything. So again, the advice is if you've got to go downtown, take public transportation. You'll get there a heck of a lot easier, and hopefully this will be a successful event for all of us. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to go ahead and pass the meeting to our Assistant City Manager, A.J. Johnson-Newton.
Good evening, Community, Council, and Mayor. My name is A.J. Johnson-Newton, and I will be leading the City Manager report tonight. The first presentation is the Ferry Pilot Evaluation and Alternatives. And so this presentation is a culmination of the evaluation study that was done for the ferry funded through the Department of Commerce grant. The study looked at the 2022 pilot, current travel patterns, and then broader transportation and mobility needs within Des Moines. Why can't I say where we're at? I'm sorry, I have sunbrain today. Des Moines. So I'd like to welcome up Dan Ernestine and team to start the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan Ernestine, and I am proud to hand the mic over immediately to Greg Nordine, who has been doing the bulk of the real technical study on this and has a really interesting presentation for you this evening. Greg?
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, City Council, Mayor. Appreciate you all taking the time tonight to learn a bit more about the work that we've been the ferry pilot evaluation that we've been working on for the past 9 months. My name is Greg Nordine. I'm the project manager for this effort. I've been working with a team of planners to complete this report along with Dan. We're with Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates, a firm based up in Seattle. We'll talk a little bit about the scope of the work that we've been working on with the ferry evaluation, and that will lead into a discussion about the underlying market for ferry service, as well as the evaluation of the pilot that operated back in 2022. We'll talk a little bit about how we've been engaging your community through this process, and then we're going to talk about some of the recommendations and alternatives that we've identified through this work. So diving into the scope, this is a study that was looking at a ferry pilot that operated back between August 10th and October 9th in 2022, so a ferry that was about 3.5 years ago. And this project was made possible through a Washington Department of Commerce grant that was awarded back in October of 24, and the contract for this study was approved in December of 25, so we're about 5 months in from that. There are 3 components of the study. We evaluated the ferry pilot and market analysis, which was this work. We are also engaging the public through stakeholder interviews. We have an online survey that's currently active, and we are also running focus groups right now. Those are currently in process, and those will be incorporated into the final version of this study. But because those are still active, we're just going to give you some update about how those are going today. There's also an economic development impact study that is supplemental to this that we are not leading, that is actually being led by a separate firm, Burke, that is currently in development. The goals of this study was really that we wanted to encourage the city to explore public transportation partnerships, We wanted to assist King County Metro's Marine Division in the feasibility for future ferry services, and we wanted to make sure that any potential grants that the city might pursue in the future, that this will help strengthen those applications. As I said, there are 3 components of the study. We started with what is called our market analysis. The market analysis is going to provide some insight into what the demand for public transportation and a ferry is within Des Moines specifically. We also have what's called our ferry pilot evaluation. This is looking at the performance from the 2022 ferry pilot and seeing how well it performed, plus our stakeholder engagement, and then that leads us to our recommendations and alternatives. So diving into the market analysis, the first thing we want to do is we want to understand the propensity or the likelihood that if public transportation is made available, how likely is it that people would actually utilize it? So what this map is showing you, we've got Des Moines is right here. What this map is showing you is this is a combination of a few things. This is population density, job density, and then a demographic analysis. The long and short of it is that the more density you have, both residential and job density, the more likely it is that public transportation is a tool that will be effective in your community. What this map is demonstrating is that the darker orange kind of brown colors are areas where there's a lot of population density and job density, as well as the demographic characteristics that would support the underlying usage of public transportation. Within Des Moines, we see a meaningful opportunity for public transportation, that meaning if public transportation were provided, it would be potentially successful. However, it has to meet a few conditions. It has to go where people want to go. It has to go when they want to go there. And it has to be as convenient or as affordable as other options. So offering somebody public transportation that takes 2 hours for a trip that could be accomplished by a car in 20 minutes is not a particularly competitive transit solution. So what we see here in this map is essentially that we do think that there is an underlying demand for some type of public transportation if it were made available. This isn't necessarily saying a ferry, but in general, there are enough characteristics here that public transportation should be successful. When we look at where people are actually going in the regional or the travel flows, we look at these at 2 levels. We start with our regional flows. So these are the areas that people are going to that are outside of Des Moines. And we look at this 2 ways. We look at commuter, we look at this by hour, but we're looking at commuter patterns, and we're also looking at non-work travel patterns. So these are things like doctor's appointments, going to the grocery store, visiting friends, whatever it is that's non-work related. Some of the regional destinations, actually the regional destinations that showed up with the most utilization, South Center sees about 5,000 trips per day between Des Moines and South Center, meaning there's about 5,000 people that make that trip on a daily basis. SeaTac has about 3,700 people that make a trip there. Kent, between West Hill and Auburn, I believe there's about another 4,000 to 5,000 people there. Federal Way has about 1,500. And Auburn has, I think it's 1,500 as well. But those 5 destinations are the top regional travel destinations that we've seen. So it's South Center, SeaTac, Kent, Federal Way, and Auburn are the places that people are generally traveling to regionally. Non-commute trips, those are trips, again, that are not work-focused. Those are actually occurring at a rate that's about 4 to 6 times greater than commute trips and occur throughout the day, not just during peak travel patterns. So what this is telling us is that any transit solution can't just address work commute if it's going to be successful, because it's actually not the bulk of the transportation or travel that's occurring. It's actually non-work commute or non-work travel, and that's happening pretty consistently throughout the day. When we look at the local travel flows, so this is travel occurring within Des Moines. We're seeing that the top destinations that really stand out are Highline College, Mount Rainier High School. People are traveling to downtown Des Moines, and then also the marina. So in short, our underlying analysis of the market is showing that there is a fairly limited demand for connections between the Des Moines Marina and Belle Harbor Marina in Seattle. While Seattle itself is a major travel market, we're actually seeing that there's fewer than 50 trips per day that are occurring between a walk radius of the Des Moines Marina and the Belle Harbor Marina. This means that most people that would use this service would have to have some sort of first last mile connection for it to be feasible, which is going to make this less attractive for most travelers. The commuter travel that we do see is primarily oriented towards those major employment centers that are more inland focused and are focused during peak travel periods, meaning a ferry is probably not going to meet the needs of most people that are commuting from Des Moines. Non-work travel tends to be more local and is also just distributed throughout the day. And again, this indicates that any solution or transit solution has to think about all day service to meet the needs or meet travel needs. Any questions on the market analysis? All right. The ferry pilot, so jumping from the market analysis into the ferry pilot evaluation. So just as a refresher, the ferry operated from August 10th to October 9th, 2022. It is worth noting that this significantly predates the expansion of Sound Transit's Link Line 1 extension that opened last year. This service operated 5 days per week, Wednesday through Sunday. That's notable because if you again are somebody who works a 5-day-a-week, 9-to-5 job, Monday through Friday, immediately this service did not work for anybody working those schedules because it didn't operate on Mondays and Tuesdays. There were 4 round trips per day between Des Moines and Seattle. The first departure left Des Moines at 10 a.m. and the last departure left Seattle at 5 p.m. Fares were set at $10 per one-way trip, and there were some discounted fares available for seniors and military, and youth under the age of 13 rode for free. As far as how the ferry operated or performed, over the course of that pilot, there were just shy of 17,000 boardings total, and that came out to about 375 people used, or 375 boardings occurred on the ferry each day. Should indicate boarding does not necessarily mean unique person, because people are taking round trips. You can most likely divide this number by 2, and it will tell you that there's about 180 to 190 people use that every day. Over the course of the pilot, it generated about just shy of $90,000 in revenue, and operating costs were between $790,000 and $970,000 total. That discrepancy in the operating cost is due to the fact that there were some consultants' fees that were that included the ferry as part of their work, but were also inclusive of other tasks, and we weren't able to break those down. So that range is really consultant work or consultant fees. The 793 number is the number we actually used to generate all of the performance metrics, though. So we were conservative in using the lower range. On average, each trip cost about $2,200 to operate, meaning those 8 round trips every day were about $16,000 total to operate. Your average cost per passenger, when you take that $16,000 per day, you divide over the 375 boardings. On average, it was costing the cost for each passenger is about $46.70. But the revenue generated was only about $6.28, meaning that essentially this was a service that was subsidized about $40 every passenger received about $40 in subsidy. So what the pilot demonstrated, though, is that there is a demand for ferry-only service between Des Moines and downtown Seattle. However, the demand that we observed, we believe, is unlikely to translate into long-term sustainable ridership for a few reasons. First of all, during the pilot, there was a survey that was administered, and the primary travel purpose that was identified by the overwhelming number of people who use that survey or use the service identified leisure travel as the reason that they were utilizing the ferry. Consistent ferry usage will be very limited without expanding service to meet commuter needs. While leisure travel is an important part of the ferry profile, it also doesn't translate into regular sustained ridership for most people. You don't generally go to Seattle 5 times a week as a leisure trip. And so without capturing a commuter market, the leisure market will probably have very limited long-term sustainability. We also think that the timing of year contributed to some of the ridership as well. It was operated during a time of year that was people want to be outside. Off-peak months, inclement weather, those are going to both have negative impacts on potential ridership. And it's worth noting that most people aren't even getting on the water until May anyways. And so really the potential for ridership on this is probably seasonal at best. The limited duration and promotional fare period, we also think induced some demand. There's modal novelty, right? There's a ferry that's operating. that novelty goes away if that ferry service is operated in the long term. And because most of that was leisure travel, we don't think that we think the limited duration was inducing more people to want to ride the ferry. Some of the things that we've also observed, the competitive travel times on the ferry. While a ferry trip takes about 35 minutes, a trip on the Link 1 station or Link 1 line takes about 45 minutes to get to Seattle. However, the Link 1 service operates every 8 minutes and is only a $3 fare, so it's providing a very frequent and a very effective, cost-effective regional connection. One way to think about this is that the 2-hour wait between ferry trips, that is a cost to passengers. If you need to get to where you're going and you have to wait 2 hours to do it, it's a very big disincentive to want to utilize that service in the long term. So you would have to think about either more frequent ferry service or potentially finding another option to make that connection more frequently. Now that there is a light rail service that is running parallel a lot more frequently for a much lower fare, we think that is going to be a huge incentive for people to utilize that service over a ferry potentially in the long term. With a total operating cost just shy of $1 million and total revenues of about $90,000, fares would have to be set near $40 per one-way trip for the service to be self-sustaining in the long term. That means a round trip would cost about $80 each way, or $80 total. And we don't think that ridership would be sustained at this level, at this fare, meaning that there's probably no future in which a ferry service could operate without some level of subsidy, because most people would be unwilling to pay $80 to ride that ferry. On the engagement front, this is still in process, but we have interviewed a handful of stakeholders throughout this project. Within the City of Des Moines, we've talked to community development, the city manager, we've spoken with harbor master, Public Works Department, and also with Administrative Services. We've met with the Chamber of Commerce. We've talked to the King County Metro, Kitsap Transit, and Washington State DOT. Some of the things that came up in this, some of the topics we discussed, we talked about the operations of the pilot in 2022 and got their thoughts on that pilot, on the pilot service. We talked about the considerations for future ferry service if if the city does decide that you want to pursue future ferry service. What are some of the operational considerations? We talked about how service might need to be modified in the future to be more effective, thinking about that Wednesday through Sunday 4-round trips. We talked about some of the local transportation challenges and gaps that we see that maybe would be better served by the ferry service or maybe be unaddressed by the ferry service. And we talked about the connectivity to existing transportation infrastructure, most notably the new light rail stations. Some of the feedback that we heard from those interviews, in the short to midterm, there is some space constraint in Seattle for ferry docking. That is something that Kitsap is currently actively working on resolving, but that is still several years away. And they are still identifying a location, meaning that any future ferry service that might not be able to go to the same locations or up to the Belle Island Marina. Some of the other challenges that we discussed were long-term vessel procurement, storage, and maintenance. Because this was a pilot that only operated for a couple of months, these were issues that really weren't explored through that pilot. But long-term, to operate a ferry service successfully, you'd have to think about spares, meaning you'd have to have multiple vehicles. You have to think about where those vehicles are going to be stored and how they're going to be maintained, all adding additional cost to that service. On the governance and funding front, we talked about how some of the things that were discussed. One of the big challenges that was identified were the limited nature of operational funds. Operationally, those are already highly constrained and highly programmed by transit operators regionally. Adding a new service to that mix would most likely have to come at the expense of other operations that are already being, or other services that are being operated. Most likely, though, what would have to occur is that Des Moines would have to probably identify a long-term funding source locally. Yes, you would have to most likely find a local funding source to operate this. Some feedback we did receive as well was that the recent investments in light rail may complicate a political interest in wanting to develop new modal connections. Specifically, the feedback we received was if you're going to the state legislature to ask for assistance through this, the first question will probably be, how are we maximizing the access to the new light rail stations that have already opened? This was a massive investment. What are we doing to improve connections there before introducing new connections? Some of the things that we heard about transportation priorities through these interviews: Southern Des Moines has an identified need for better transit connectivity. They would not benefit, Redondo Beach would not benefit directly from that ferry service. There is no transit service in the Redondo Beach neighborhood today. There's minimal active transportation infrastructure today, and this is probably complicated by a number of reasons: street safety, topography challenges. But just thinking about cycling infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, these interviews highlighted that there's a perception that there's opportunity to improve those connections. There was discussion of first and last mile gaps to getting people to those light rail stations. You're crossing over Route 99. They're a little bit removed from the core of downtown or of the city. There's definitely some gaps in terms of connecting people to those light rail stations and making those connections any other way than by car. One of the other things that was identified is that this project will probably require a lot of political capital, and that will probably take away from other transportation priorities that are probably more important, but won't actually get the bandwidth or the attention that they require. One thing that has come up is there is an opportunity potentially to think about a ferry service that is actually more of a gateway service. So instead of thinking about Des Moines as a destination, you're thinking more about regional connectivity, specifically thinking about opportunities to connect west of Vashon Island, which was not within our scope. We were really focused on the connection up to Seattle. But that is a potential possibility, especially with the Fauntleroy terminal that's going to be undergoing rehab in the next few years. As far as the surveys and the focus groups are concerned, these are still, the survey is still, was launched on April 20th, 2026, a little over a month ago. It is still active. We've been promoting the survey through through various outlets, through the city's social media. We are working with Mount Rainier High School to engage students in this directly. This is a little out of date because it was updated on the 13th, but as of just now, we're at about 267 respondents in total. The questions in the survey were really targeted in just understanding people's perceptions and understand key challenges that are perceived within the current transportation network, and to also gauge interest in future ferry service. Some of the things, and these are that we're hearing, we've heard through the survey, and again, these are still being updated because this is still a live survey. Some of the top destinations that people report: going to Burien, Tukwila, Federal Way, Kent. In the last 6 months from the survey respondents, about 30% of them have used transit, and about 80% of them have been driving alone. Of the people that have utilized transit, over 90% of them have actually already used the new light rail service, and over 75% of people responded have also used it. Getting to light rail stations is primarily done by people that are driving alone. Some took transit or got a ride, but right now we have not found or spoken to anyone that has actually used a bicycle to get to light rail. One thing that did come up, about 1 in 3 of our respondents have said that the access challenges getting to stations mean that they will only utilize light rail if they can drive there, or if they can be dropped off. Meaning they won't bike, they won't walk, or they won't use public transit because they think it's too challenging to get there. About a ferry specifically, we noted that about 80% said that they would use a ferry to commute to Seattle for pleasure, and about 8% said they would commute, which tracks with about what we've observed. Again, without having stable commute travel, bidirectional commute travel, it's going to be really challenging to build sustainable ridership. Some of the top transportation improvement preferences, actually I'm going to look at my notes here because we updated this today. The top connectivity improvements that people, or the top priorities that were observed, transit access to light rail is number 1. Improved transit access within Des Moines itself is number 2. And then sidewalk improvements were the 3rd most popular option. The ferry to Seattle ranked 4th, but as of this morning, 84% of those respondents said that, again, it would be leisure travel that is what they would use it for. If transportation were more, if transit and active transportation were more easily available in Des Moines, some of the places people said they would go, they would come to downtown more often, and they would also go to the Marina District more often. The respondents, this is actually very incorrect as of this point, because the swell that we've had over the past week has primarily been younger students. So right now our respondents are about 50% are under the age of 18, and the other 50% are over the age of 18, primarily older adults. Some of the feedback that we've received through this, these are some of the direct feedback we've received from respondents about how changes in or improved public transportation access would actually improve their lives. It would change everything. Right now it takes people about 45 minutes to walk to the light rail. Buses no faster and can even take longer. So obviously that would be a cutting back on a 45-minute trip would be a significant improvement in that person's life. Again, people have indicated they want to come to the Marina District, they want to come downtown. And then one thing that we've asked specifically is how, if we make more transportation options available, how would it change how they visit local businesses? And again, pretty consistently we have heard that if there are more transportation options available, people would have an easier time visiting downtown and connecting to the Marina District. So, thinking about some of the recommendations, we currently believe that right now, the current market as it stands, we don't believe that it can support the development of a future ferry service. This is really due to high operational costs and the limited market potential, which would require a very high degree of subsidy to be financially sustainable. And that's even compounded by the fact that those funding sources are going to be pretty limited externally outside of the city. It doesn't mean that we don't think that a ferry could never be feasible. One of the things that we believe is that there is the opportunity to build a market for a ferry service, but that's going to require things like expanding service to cover more hours of the day. And it's also going to require creating a volume of bidirectional travel. So one of the things we observed in the ferry pilot was that primarily it was people going from Des Moines to Seattle, not the reverse. And so one of the things that we think would have to change to develop a market for a ferry is that you would have to focus on creating bidirectional travel, meaning it's bringing just as many people from Seattle down here as it would be taking people from Des Moines up to Seattle. The other complicating factor here is the recent investments in the regional light rail offer highly competitive travel times, and future ferry service would have to improve its frequency to remain competitive, which again would just further increase that cost. We believe that investments in the first and last mile connectivity within Des Moines and to light rail stations will provide a greater mobility benefit than investing in future ferry service. By focusing on bike lanes, transit access, and sidewalk access, we think that it's going to cost less money, but it's also going to provide a better benefit to people that are trying to make regional connections now. We think that the priority should be given to making improvements to the vital infrastructure and destinations, including thinking about the light rail stations, connecting people to Mount Rainier High School, Highline College, downtown, and the marina. It's worth noting, today people, South Center, which is the highest travel destination, or the most common travel destination regionally, you can get there in about 16 minutes by automobile, but the same trip for passenger and public transportation takes nearly an hour. Meaning that if you commute to South Center on a daily basis in a car, that takes you about 30 minutes total, but if you're on a bus, that takes you about 2 hours of your day. Kent Valley is pretty similar. Passengers, people going to Kent Valley, if you're a driver, you can do it in about 12 minutes. Transit riders, it's about 55 minutes to an hour on average. So again, about 24 minutes round trip for an automobile driver, but it's 2 hours of the day for somebody that's on public transportation. That concludes our presentation. Certainly open to comments. Dan, did you want to provide some feedback on, I forgot to cue you on the feedback we were hearing from some of the students today.
Yeah, yesterday and today we've been interacting with Mount Rainier High School students. We've been in 5 classes and talked to 138 high school students, and we knew going in that the survey was likely to hit older people who were, reading city newspapers and so forth, city newsletters. And we wanted to really seed these decisions with people who would be, riding public transportation or need public transportation at this time. So we reached out to Mount Rainier, and we're very happy to have that relationship. And I won't go into all the different feedback, but a couple things stood out that we thought were interesting. I think it's the light bulb went on that a lot of public transportation decisions are being made right now that these kids will get to experience when they're their parents' age, and that's kind of mind-blowing for them, that a thing like a light rail station to Ballard, which may or may not happen until 2050, when they started doing the math, that was a big deal. They were learning in the class about activism, and so we were able to emphasize the reason we are here is to hear you so that your voice can make a difference and change what happens in the future. So, just on a general level, that was a really wonderful educational opportunity. Great job by the transportation community here. They almost all to a person knew that they could ride transit for free through their 18th birthday, or through being 18 till their 19th birthday. By far the favorite place to go in Des Moines was the marina. They loved the marina. They had lots of ideas about great things to do at the marina in addition to what was already there. They also loved the Dollar Tree. Go figure. One of the most interesting points I think that stood out to us is there's an underlying level of public safety concerns riding public transportation. At least 5 of the young women suggested that if there were cars for only, like on the light rail, if one of the cars was for women only, that would make it more attractive to them. They talked a lot about parents' fears of them riding public transportation as well. So just some of the comments. We'll, obviously include more in the final report.
Thank you. Council, we have time now for questions or discussion. Deputy Mayor Oxiger.
Yes, thank you for the survey. It's very informative. I was just curious that I believe that there was some data that was collected by the previous study that showed that the public felt that the $10 fee was the correct fee, and that they were not many of them were willing to pay anything more. And so we're looking at $10 versus the 40. So was any of that information?
Yes, we asked a similar question in our updated survey just to confirm fares. And again, about 85% of respondents have indicated that the maximum fare they'd be willing to pay each way is $20. But 58% said they'd be willing to pay no more than $15. So with a $46 per passenger operating cost, even at the highest tolerable fare, you're still looking at about subsidizing it about half.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
It's neither here nor there, but I tried taking my e-bike to the light rail. I'll have to take that up with Dow because it's not as easy as you.
Take our survey.
What's that?
You could take the survey. We have no bike riders, so. No.
Yeah, no, it was anyway. I never say this, but because I just hate this phrase, but that was an excellent presentation. It's probably in the top 3 of any I've heard here, and I didn't want to have to say that, but it's true. And I didn't vote to accept this grant, even to hire you guys, but my hope is that because it was so good and so specific, it will provide guidance for because what happened over the years is that there have been many surveys, and they were just ambiguous enough that people could engage in magical thinking as to whatever and you mentioned briefly induced demand. The only question I really have is, it wasn't part of your remit, but has there been any work done to suggest some kind of leisure network? In other words, I think what people really want is like a clipper that comes once or twice a week and just kind of When I first got here, it was $6 to go from Anacortes to Orcas, and it was magical when people talk about the past, and opening up that to the public somehow would be magical. We literally had it, but has there been any work to talk about what might make that limited thing possible?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So our work was really focused on that connection from Des Moines up to Seattle. So that was the bulk of our work. However, it was noted something that we did note through this work was that what you're describing would be probably the ideal use case if there is a ferry, would be sort of a limited, very.
No, don't get me wrong. I don't want us to pay for it. I
Yeah.
just wanted to know.
No, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not suggesting that the city would pay for that either. If there is a market for a ferry, it's what you're describing, which would be sort of a seasonal kind of pleasure cruise where the ferry is actually part of the reason you're taking the trip, if not the whole reason. It most likely would be private, but it would, yes, it would, that's probably one of the more likely use cases that we think would be successful.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
I agree with Councilmember Harris that, yeah, we never intended to pay for a ferry. The pilot was exactly that, a pilot to try to induce somebody else to do it. I think there are a lot of things that are somewhat problematic in the conclusions that you've drawn. However, in this study, for example, you correctly determined nobody commutes from Des Moines to within a half-mile radius of Belle Harbor. There's never been any way to get there. Yeah. It existed, so of course nobody would go there. If you actually had a job in that area, why would you live in Des Moines? You wouldn't. You'd live closer. And therefore, the fact that there is no commute traffic now reflects that.
Yes.
It is a very good statement of the obvious. It is not at all a market study that something could be developed over time, and that's the piece that's kind of missing from a lot of these. The public transportation never recovers 100% of operating costs, let alone capital costs. I mean, it just doesn't exist anywhere. Mm-hmm. When I was in college at San Diego State, I was there. I was working for the San Diego Trolley when it opened, and I was actually pulling the cash boxes out and recovering those funds. And we were so proud when we got to 38% of our operating costs. You're not informing the public by saying we would have to have this huge gap in revenue, because that's not how public transportation works. And I think that's somewhat problematic in this presentation. You talk about back and forth, or bilateral, I think you called it, mm-hmm. transportation. Well, again, the bilateral transportation, if there was a commute, you would see the number of people commuting and the same number of people coming back. So you wouldn't have a discrepancy. It might not be enough to support for that route for the first 5 years, because it takes time to develop. Mm-hmm. But, nobody in New York commutes to Long Island during the day and then comes back to New York. That's not how commutes work. Commutes are to the place where the jobs are and then back to where the people live. So there never is going to be somebody coming back at the same time people are moving the other direction. I don't think that's a realistic view of public transportation, the way it works. And, of course, the way you just presented it, we didn't hear any of that. It wasn't on a daily basis that I heard, at least. And that's what we're really talking about, is on a daily basis, are people going and coming so that you do have that bilateral. You know, all that being said, Des Moines cannot operate a ferry on its own. And, you know, it was simply a pilot project during the great months, at times that was not intended to show anything about commuting. And so the data that you could gather from this pilot project really doesn't address any of the issues that you're raising about the feasibility of trying to have a real ferry commute out of here. And it's not going to happen unless somebody else who is running a ferry and running it at scale that makes it more affordable so that it's not $46, you know, each person, each trip, because at the scale we were operating it, it just never was going to happen. It was about showing something entirely different than what you were studying, and using that data just doesn't quite commute. But, you know, we don't want to pay for a ferry. We can't. We're a small city, and there's no reason why we should. But if we can find enough partners, like you said, even if we can do a pleasure cruise a couple of times a week, that'd be great.
Yeah. In reference to the market, I appreciate that feedback. In reference to building a market, you're correct. We are not looking longitudinally. We're not predicting where commutes are going to change over the next 20 years. That was not the question that we were asked to answer. Making a ferry connection to a place where there's not a lot of people commuting today is a recipe to ensure that that ferry will operate at less than capacity for a long time, until people actually start to make that connection. So we don't have to look 20 years in the future to say, if no one's making that connection today and we make that connection for them, suddenly there's all this untapped demand that's missing. People aren't living there, so you're correct. We're not thinking 20 years out, but we don't need to think 20 years out. If you're going to operate a ferry in the next 5 years, you're going to be operating a ferry and making that connection. It's going to most likely be empty for long enough that you would question whether or not it's worth continuing to operate long enough to build that market. It's a very expensive service to operate, quite frankly. As far as the bidirectional aspect, you're correct. People don't commute in a bidirectional, or people don't generally commute in a bidirectional pattern. One of the challenges with a ferry is you don't have the opportunity to pick people up along the way, whereas light rail between here and Seattle, there's a dozen stations, so you can continue to build market, meaning you don't have to have bidirectional travel in the same way. However, a ferry, you're 2 points generally. So you either have to get everybody at that point to that point, you have to build up your entire demand. You have no demand coming from Seattle, so you're at a massive disadvantage. So we're not suggesting that the only way it could be successful, but a very quick way to build additional, or if you have that bidirectional connection, it makes it a lot easier to justify that service in the long run. You made several points. Those are the two I could remember off the top of my head. But yes.
Anyone else before I go back around? Okay, Councilmember Harris.
Can you perceive any point in Seattle or anywhere that could act as a nexus? And what I mean is, like, I lived in Detroit and New York, and, you know, you'll have a place that's a factory, and you got 10,000 guys, and they, you know, will take a ferry to and, you know, it's a sort of a captured deal. And I was thinking, as Councilmember Steinmetz was speaking, is there any spot along the Seattle waterfront or anywhere that would provide that pivot to go to Des Moines, or Seattle strikes me as such a spread out kind of waterfront in terms of workforce and.
Are you thinking other connections besides Belfair?
Well, I'm just like, we talked about it being making us a destination, but we were being the departure. And so I was thinking, like, okay, is there a departure point anywhere that could fan out and be like a bus depot where you go, I want to go to Des Moines, I want to go to Poulsbo, I want to go to Vashon. Has any work been done that has like one really big spot. And maybe not, because the question
Well,
doesn't sound.
I jumped up here, Councilmember Harris, just because he's from Rhode Island.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, he's very aware of our region generally, but some of the people from the Seattle office were supporting him as far as the regional connectivity too. I think what you're asking is if a magical connection was made to some other place, if you could just design a ferry service that went across land or across anything, where
Is
would
there
that go?
one key point, where like a lot of people work? Amazon, I just think about all the places that have, were kind of spread out.
I'll say two things. One is the early slides that showed the travel patterns that went to, the Kent Valley and Auburn and Federal Way and South Center and SeaTac. Those are your strong connections. A lot of those are being served with bus and rapid ride and Sound Transit, but maybe not as distinctly. I think what they also found was you have kind of some magical connections within the city that aren't being made. People would really like to get to the marina and downtown more easily than they have options to do. So the positive about that is you're going from Des Moines to Des Moines, and so you're winning on both ends. So it is bidirectional and maybe appropriate. And whether that's a bicycle route or it's a walking path or it's actually transit service or something like that, that's that would be something for the future understandings. But I think from young to old, everybody loves the marina. That's the treasure. People want to get to downtown. That's a treasure. So those are real key ingredients. I think hopefully that helped. I don't think I've probably answered more the question I wanted to answer than your question, but there you go.
You answered the question, thank you.
If you don't mind, thinking about what you're asking, Councilman, I think so some of the challenges that Kitsap Transit right now is actually exploring a new ferry terminal, because basically all the ferry terminals that are available today are at capacity. And that was actually one of the challenges during the pilot, was they had to make space to squeeze the Des Moines ferry into the existing ferry terminals up in Seattle. So Kitsap is exploring a new ferry terminal, but there's a lot of considerations that go into that: environmental, job access, availability of land, et cetera. And that is a multi-year process that is involving the federal government, so that they're actually working on right now. My understanding is that when they have that selected, they're actually selecting a site specifically to provide additional capacity for future ferry services, but you would have no control over where that ferry terminal actually ends up, because that's going to be selected by Kitsap. So there will be potential for a ferry connection in the future, but you won't have necessarily a ton of opportunity to impact where that terminal ends up, if that makes sense. So they are actively looking at trying to identify where is the next connection that needs to be made, if that.
Councilmember Simons.
Yeah, I just want to check and make sure I'm following you, but isn't the answer to Councilmember Harris's question by the fact that the current ferry terminals are at capacity?
Mm-hmm.
People are coming into Seattle. There's no question about that.
Yep.
And so, you don't need one spot, but rather you need access out of those ferry terminals. And now they're going to build another ferry terminal just so people can get from Kitsap and over. So it can be a destination for commuters because currently it's at capacity.
But they're also solving transportation challenges that aren't being met by other transportation options. You have light rail in your community that's providing 8-minute frequent service into Seattle, and it's only 45 minutes. It's far more cost effective and far more impactful to focus on improving the connections to the existing asset, than trying to build an entirely new one. Yeah. That you will have to operate as a community, because the transportation dollars that are programmed for operations are already highly programmed. Like there's not a pool of money out there waiting for a new ferry service to start. So you would have to compete with those other things And you'd have to make the argument why the light rail service isn't making the connection you need to make,
Thank you.
need to make.
Yeah.
It's not operating at cost, recovering anywhere near cost at all, let alone.
You are correct. No transit services operate at make back their, well, very few transit services make back their money. All transit services subsidized to some degree. You're correct about that.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is, though, is that you are proposing a service that will very clearly need a lot of subsidy to operate, and there are services that are operating with far less subsidy today.
Thank you. I really appreciate your presentation. I think there is actually a massive amount of information about the current demand and the current travel patterns and leisure travel patterns of Des Moines residents in this that I think that we could continue to learn from and really analyze how we could improve last mile, other transit, and serve the folks that are telling us that what they're interested in is inside Des Moines, coming to the inside and coming to the marina and downtown, I think is really a highlight that is very interesting. So I want to say thank you so much. I learned a tremendous amount just reading this report, and I encourage folks to go online and look at it because it's got a ton of information in it. So maybe we'll see you moving to the Northwest now that you've seen it, what it looks like on a sunny day. But I want to say thank you again to Dan and to Greg here. We're going to move on to our next presentation. All right.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Director of Administrative Services, Bonnie Wilkins, who will be providing an update on the city's website.
Thank you, AJ. Mayor, Council, I'm Bonnie Wilkins, the Director of Administrative Services, and I, along with Allison Dascom and Corey Fechner, who are with Art and Science Communications, will be giving you a presentation tonight on the city's new and up-and-coming website.
Hello, this is Allison. My video is disabled, so, oh, there we go. Hello. Good evening. I'm Allison Dascom, the founder of Art and Science Communications, and my colleague Corey Fechner is on the line as well. Bonnie, do you want to dig in and then I'll share mine?
Sure. Thanks, Allison. 1 second here, get the PowerPoint up. Thank you, Tara. Okay. As I mentioned, we're here to talk about our new website, and what we're doing, we're transitioning from our Civic Live portal to our new Civic Plus platform. Civic Plus is widely used by a lot of municipalities across the country, so they were selected after a RFP went out. We did a review of all that. We had a little team in-house that we did, and they came out as the top winner of that particular RFP. What we heard from the public about our current website that we have, residents, businesses, and users experienced several common concerns about our current website, which were information was hard to find, navigation felt confusing, inconsistent, the search function was horrific, and you couldn't always find what you were looking for, and the council agendas, minutes, and videos were difficult to find as well. With this new Civic Plus, we're going with this wonderful component called Audio Eye integration. As you might know, next year, I think 2026, by April of 2026, we have to be ADA compliant with our website. So Audio Eye will automatically scan for a lot of different things that we have going on with our website. So if we put something on incorrectly, it will tell us, hey, this isn't working right, you need to fix it, and from there we can do that. So we hope to be fully compliant by next year, if not sooner. And then that's really about it for me. I'll go ahead and let Allison and Corey, who have all the really great information about the behind the scenes and how we got to where we are today, and she's going to do great. So take it away, Allison and Corey.
All right, thank you very much. Would somebody let me know if you can see my screen?
We can, yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, good evening. Thanks for having us. Tonight we are here to talk about the new website. It's really exciting, and I first want to give kudos to the city team. So Catherine and Bonnie and their colleagues have been really wonderful to work with, and that has made this in part why it's so successful. So I want to go through essentially how did we get here, right? There's an existing site that's being redesigned, moved, and created to a new platform. And so what's the rationale? What's the approach? And essentially, how did we get here? So I want to walk through that, answer any questions along the way, and get your input. So the strategy process, like Bonnie said, the overall goal is to make the website easier for people to use. And of course, that's the user goal. We also, on the back end, we want it to be easier for Google to index and serve up to folks. So we want to have stuff on the front end and the back end. So good content organization, right? It makes sense. It's easy to navigate through. You all know when you've been on a website that is clunky and it's hard to, right, to find what you're looking for, you're not likely to stay there very long or have a good experience. So there's stuff that we're doing on the front end and then stuff we're doing on the back end. So like back end development and sending strong signals to Google and other search engines. So it's really a two-pronged approach there. In terms of the process, it's a lot of running reports and data and numbers. So we look at site analytics. So where's your traffic coming from? What channels, what devices? And we'll go through select points of that in a moment. Search behavior. So that means, you know, when it says organic search trends, what does that mean? It means when people go to Google and they type something in, we look at those aggregate trends of what are the things people looking for when they want to get information about Des Moines. Look at the gaps, where can we fill those in and address those? And then we do a content evaluation. So the structure, so it's called content architecture. What's the content architecture of the site? How is it layered, the first level navigation and second and so on? A website review of like comparable cities to look at what other folks are doing, and then with the content gaps and producing a sitemap. So select research findings. I think this is some of the most fun. We ran many, many, many reports, which we don't have time to go through, but we will go through a few key points. So, and I'm not familiar with y'all's process, but if you typically ask questions along the way, please just pipe in as questions come to you.
We'd like to save the questions for the end.
Okay, thanks for letting me know that. So some of the things we look at in terms of site analytics are engagement. You can see on the left, so this is 2025 year to date, and we have sessions, we have engaged sessions, which is defined by a few different factors. It is how long someone's on the site, but it's, you know, are they going to multiple pages? Are they clicking on links? And then we have your engagement rate at the bottom. For channels, you can see that Google is your top channel. You've also got a little bit of Bing traffic, some Facebook, but Google's the main one. And in terms of devices, you've got a little more desktop than mobile. In the olden days, we would see a little smattering of mobile traffic, but a lot of sites weren't optimized for mobile, meaning they looked good on desktop. And when you looked at them on a mobile device, it was, you know, kind of clunky and hard to navigate. And so now we always optimize sites for mobile. And here you've got almost a half and half split on desktop and mobile. This is a big one I want to point out. So your traffic, you can see in this left-hand column, here are the ways that people get to your site. So organic search means that they go to Google or to Bing and they type in a term related to Des Moines, and that's how they get to your site. Direct means that they could type in the URL. More likely, it's that they have it bookmarked and they'll go there. So maybe they have a page or even the home page. And then referral traffic, right? You're mentioned on another website and they refer users to you. But that organic search is almost 60%. So your biggest percentage by far, and something that we really want to be considerate about when we're planning out content and structure of the site, is does it work really well for search? Another thing we look at is comparative performance for municipalities. And so you can see, and I know y'all received this in advance, but you can see on the left these benchmarks, right, for municipalities, so engagement, direct traffic, and so on. What I really want to call attention to is this. So this is for Des Moines, for your current website. The organic performance is strong, but direct traffic underperforms. And what that means is when somebody Googles Des Moines or something related to Des Moines, Google is going to serve up. If somebody Googles Des Moines Municipal Court, Google is likely going to serve up the Des Moines Municipal Court page. And so that user immediately, Google has done the work for them. It said, I found this, and it serves that up. So the user doesn't have to navigate through the website. But direct traffic underperforms, meaning use cases, somebody has the homepage bookmarked and they want to look up something, that's going on in the city, and they use that bookmark, get to the homepage, and it takes them a long time to get what they need. And so what that shows us is there are navigation gaps, UX, which is user experience. There are gaps there that we can improve on for search. And so that's why SEO, search engine optimization, is one of our goals and one of our responsibilities in this project is to meet that gap, or rather to bridge that gap. Here we have some views by category, and I'm not going to go through each one of these, but the importance here is looking at, we call them like search intent or intent buckets. So looking at things in groups, like what are people interested in, and then tallying those up so we have an idea of what should be at top level, what should be at secondary level, so we can understand how to organize things, not the way, that I might do it personally or that Corey might or Bonnie, but what in aggregate are users interested in, and how can we serve those needs and make it really easy for them to find things and engage with the site. We also looked, let me mention, so this is when people were searching for something, like Googling something. So that's where this data comes from. This next one is when it's called Insight Search. It's when people use the search bar on your website, go in and type something. And so we want to look at both of those because Google tells us, general search patterns and trends, and Insight Search tells us, okay, maybe they can't find this somewhere else. So we ran all time and then year to date to get a picture of what's been the progression of that in terms of those search queries. So why do we care? Why is it important? This really gives us, all of these numbers, insight into what your audience wants. And then it tells us, okay, here's how we can organize the website, write content, do that back-end work that makes it easy for Google to index, right, to crawl and index, and it makes it easy for users to use and explore your site. In terms of the content preparation, who doesn't love a good spreadsheet, right? So this is another example of the type of thing we run to inform our work. So you can see the URL, right, the link, and we ran these for, I think it was like 2,000 pages, and then have a methodology of getting the value of users, right? And so we use, all kinds of different data points, and then gave that a score, and ranked it as, yes, we really need to move this over, or it's medium level, or no, there's not a lot of interest. And so again, it's just an example of one way that we were looking at the top level, right, of top level navigation and big buckets of interest. And we're also looking at all these little details to say, okay, how do we match that up? And how do we organize and answer the call of users, both at a 30,000 foot level and at a quite detailed level? This is an example of one thing to consider. So navigation, and I'll show I'll call it the draft website for now, and you'll see the navigation at the top, which is, I'm sure y'all are used to, like on any website, you've got that, the navigation, the sections at the top of the site. And then on this new, the draft site, we have little icons that go across the middle and then these three buckets. And so, right, you want to think through, so how are these different? You've got these three levels of different content pieces. So, right, like on navigation, for example, like it needs to meet user intent. Icons, it's something that they're going to need really quickly. Buckets, it represents a category, not a single destination. And then for all of them, nothing duplicates any other tier. So just one way, it's kind of a little Tetris of how do we organize this in a way that makes sense in terms of best practices and for folks going to the site. Sitemap development is, this is how we organize the new pages. This is not the entire thing, it's just a snippet. But it just shows you how we organize the hierarchy. So, right, that top level navigation and so on. So we have each page and we work on them individually, but we also see how they relate as a whole. I mentioned mobile view, so just a screenshot here to demonstrate what does that look like. And we're doing testing and optimization there as well as desktop because we know that's important. It was almost half, I think it was 43% for y'all of users on mobile. And then draft site review. So this is your existing site. So I think it's just good to get a like level set. Okay, this is the site today. And then the draft site that we have now is this. And so I'm not going to go through the whole site. And I will say this is in draft form, so it's a work in progress. So the things that you see here, this is the general structure of it, but we are making content edits and additions. So please know that. So at the top, we talked about that top level navigation. So you can see government, community services up here as our top level. We also recognize that there are some really tactical things that people want to do when they get to your site. And those are represented in these icons. So for example, when you click on agenda and minutes, you can see there are a lot of ways to search. It really answers different user perspectives. So you can use this calendar view, right? Like I want to look at the council meeting from the 14th. I want to see what's going on today, or I want to do a date range, or I can search right by the category. So really a lot of ways for folks to engage. Another task, or rather like an action that we wanted to be front and center and really easy for people is report a problem. So they can go here and they see really like well organized and very simple. Here's how you do each of these things. It links out directly, explains a little about what it is, but they just have that opportunity from the get-go on the homepage. And then the last thing I'll go through, is these buckets. And so we have residents, municipal court, and doing business. And so this is what I was referencing earlier what are these sections that, it's not one action, like report a problem or see an agenda, but it's this group of things for different, right, that is represented by the three things you see here. And so we have this overlay text that tells people what to expect. And then we have this overview. If we have a CTA, a call to action, right, they can sign up for the city manager report. So we can have those links if it's applicable for the page. And then you go through and see all of the different things that are available. So events and volunteering and community enrichment. And these, again, when you looked at those data points that I was showing, this reflects that. And so, you know, if you just see a website and it's, oh, we have a new site, I mean, if I did, I would have a lot of questions of how did you get here? And so when you look at a page like this, it reflects the research around what users want and what are the gaps, and how can we bridge that. Bonnie, is there anything that you would like to add in terms of looking through the site or anything else?
You're doing a great job, Allison.
Thank you,
Keep
ma'am.
going. You're doing great.
Excuse me. So for next steps, our team is working hard with Bonnie making content updates. That's why I mentioned the draft is in progress, and so you will see content updates, a lot of them happening. We're looking at finalizing the site structure, meaning that content architecture. We're making edits, we're adding new content, we're using like updating photos. We're looking at functionality audits and UAT, which means going through and just finding anything that doesn't work. Is there a link that's broken? Is there a photo that was uploaded and it doesn't look the way that it should? Just all of these functionality things, and so that's a big part of it. And then the schedule is to launch mid to late summer. So with that, are there any questions that I can answer? Anything from terms to just anything you're curious about? What can I answer for y'all?
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I mean, visually, this is such a huge improvement. It really looks good. So let me compliment you on that. It looks like navigation is getting much better. On slide 8 of 21, you were looking at year-to-date traffic at 2025, and your second category down was direct, which you said people actually typing in a URL.
Well, it's most likely that they have it bookmarked, but yes, they can type it in. Both of those are considered direct, yes.
And what I'm not understanding is if it's most likely that they have it bookmarked, how could the new users be, who haven't been here before, that's a definition of a new user, I assume, be so much of the percentage, and those that are returning are only at, 10%. It's a little incongruous to me, and I'm just trying to understand.
Sure.
How that line makes any sense, and shouldn't I would expect them to be the numbers between new users and returning users to be reversed on that line.
I see. Okay, so I should clarify. Direct doesn't mean a new or returning user. So we see a lot of different habits, but an organic search could be someone who has been to the site, that has never been to the site or has been 50 times. So they're not categorized as new or returning. It's just if they got there from Google or if they got there from a bookmark or typing it in.
So who are the direct people? That's what I'm not understanding.
Who, like the demographics, or who? When you say who are the direct people, like, could you give me more detail, please? So I'm not sure I can answer that.
Organic search means they came from a big search engine. Direct means they came from where? That's what I don't understand. And you would not expect, if I understood it correctly, that means people who are typing in a URL or have it bookmarked, which would never be considered new users. They'd be returning users because that's why they have it bookmarked.
Right.
Or know the address. And yet when you look at that line going across, you have, of the 26,000 that got there directly, 25,000 are new users, and only 3,000.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you're talking about the
numbers. Just
yes.
I understand that, and that's.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't realize you were going to these columns. Thank you so much for that clarification. Corey, will you talk about that, about the breakdown of new and returning users in the second and third columns within Direct.
Yeah, so the way Google defines a new user is the total number of unique or first-time visitors who interacted with the website or launched a mobile app, which that's not the case here, within a specific date range. So basically, when you're looking at 2025 year to date, they're looking at, of those people, how many were new within the date range, right? And a lot of times in Google, what happens, which Chrome and also with Safari, and if you start to type in like Des Moines in your search bar, if Google will actually put the .com or the .gov in, so that's another way that Direct gets its visitors. But that specific line item is kind of a little bit misleading, just in terms of like, it's based on the date ranges that we put in Google Analytics 4 when we run the report. So if we were to run it for 1 month, it would say how many new users came from Direct within that month. So if they came, a month and a half earlier, they would be considered a new user. So if anyone, in this case, it was year to date, so it's a pretty big data pool, but it's trying to look at, did anyone come that did not come in that year at that point? So if someone came the year earlier, they would be considered a new user. Even if they bookmarked it in December of 2024, they would be considered a new user if they came back in 2025.
Okay.
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah.
And then the one other question that kind of jumped out at me is there any way to know how many people are going to Des Moines, Iowa first before they come to Des Moines, Washington's website? Because we get stuff from Des Moines, Iowa all the time.
Yeah, and that drives Direct too. I mean, we did see that crossover quite a bit. So that data was, we had to do a lot of data cleanup, especially in terms of search or keyword research, especially for brand, right? Branded is, for everyone, like branded search would be somebody utilizing the word Des Moines, like in their search query as they were looking in Google, it wasn't a non-brand. And you guys have, a lot of your organic search obviously is very brand driven, but it was a lot more because there was a crossover there. There's not a clear way that we can, the bounce rates for Direct were a little bit higher when we looked at that, and that would be an indicator that, a lot of people do get to the website and realize it's the wrong Des Moines. Even it's just a common thing that we saw happen, because we do see the bounce rates or the short time periods on the site would indicate that. And yeah, that's a great call out and a question that definitely we had to like synthesize the data a bit in terms of trying to recognize that based on some things that we noticed them searching that didn't really make sense for your community or vice versa, right? So we'd see anything waterfront based and all that. So there was some stuff we looked at. But that's a great call out, and we don't have Direct data like how much of that any of the traffic was wrong traffic, but there definitely was. I think we saw a decent amount of traffic coming that was going to the other city information.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. So I've just been dinking with it a little bit here, and let's see here. I've asked about the permalinks. That thing drives me nuts. If you can, in any way, in heck, get rid of the numbers, that would be fabulous. But I actually have a structural question. If you go to, like, the home site, the search, like if I search for, ferry, because we talked, and you mentioned animal control, it's zippy and it brings up a number of very relevant things. Why am I talking to it? Because I can't see it anyway. It brings up a number of very relevant things and wonderful, fast, right? I'm not thrilled with the order, but you can fix that. But then if you go to the agenda thing, it's not great. It's not great.
Let's look at that.
And it looks like it's a different vendor provider or domain or something. But,
Is this the page you're speaking about?
yeah, the agenda minutes thing, it's like,
Okay.
and it gets confusing
talk
because
to me
it's
about that one.
Civic Portal versus Civic Plus and so on. But, that's the thing I go to because that's the, search for, ordinances and meetings and stuff like that. And that was the one thing on the old site that was really good. And this is not great, so.
What is it that you dislike about this?
If I type in ferry, it spins and spins and spins, and then it just brings me like a list of meetings with no context. And it's slow, and there's no context, and it's so radically different. See, the old site, at least it gave you like a big paragraph, and it told you what the meeting was about and stuff like that. Okay, the only flaw in it was that it didn't have a date range. This has a date range, but it doesn't give you, I would have to, and by the way, I'm gonna be murder because I use a screen reader most of the time, so the Australian voice tells me all of the flaws on the site, which is, okay, no, I mean, it's like no joke. But if I don't have any description, when I go search for ferry, that's not fantastic. And so I'm just asking, why are they different providers? Why is the homepage search like what people want?
So,
because it seems to index not only the fun content, but also dive into like ordinances and permit apps and, but the actual meat and potatoes of civic business is needs help. And so I'll shut up because I think it speaks for itself. It's just,
yeah, so I can answer part of that. Civic
I might be able to help with that. I think we lost Allison for a second, but this is a new portal through Civic Plus. It's the agenda management system, and it actually is maybe ferry is not the right word, but we've done a lot of different searches based on a lot of different criteria, and it's come up with a ton of different hits with whatever we're searching for. If you type in less, it'll be faster and you'll get more hits. The great thing about this new program versus the other one that we had is when you did a search, you're correct, Councilmember Harris, it would list out kind of whether it was a meeting and it was the video or if it was the minutes or what have you. But the minute you clicked on that link, that particular one you thought was it, and it wasn't it, and you wanted to go back, you had to do the whole thing over again. You had to put in ferry or, whatever that again and do the whole thing over again. It didn't keep your search parameters. This will. You'll type in over on the right-hand side there where it says search all content. You put in something that you like, and it pulls all the detail up. And all of our stuff's been now loaded. We have meetings back in there to 1974, I think it is. So you can go all the way back now. The videos are connected to the meetings by the dates. We've done a lot of work. Tara's done a great job putting all that data in there and her team. So I don't know when you searched last, but maybe there's more in there now that you can go search for. But the features here for that search function, we feel, and we can maybe agree to disagree, but we feel it's way better than the prior one. But I hear what you're saying. I don't know how to fix it because I don't really know what, but we can maybe talk offline about that.
Yeah, and I'll say if it's a speed thing, we can certainly talk, more in depth with more of the back end developers to see, if we can identify problems, because there shouldn't be a long wait, right? That's a number one usability thing that people aren't going to wait. So that's a good call out there, and we'll take note of that and make sure we're monitoring for that. That's really good feedback to get.
Other questions or discussion points? Thank you very much.
I have one last, back to my PowerPoint real quick, sorry. I have one last next steps here real quick, sorry. Because there's a job for you all. Yes. Number 5, I can take it from there. Okay, next steps, okay. what do we need from you? So we would love for you and the Citizens Advisory Board to kind of be our beta testers. We're right now, as Allison and Corey have mentioned, we're just cramming data on like crazy, but what we need is people to go through, check those links, check for spelling. Does it make sense to you? Does the search function work for you? Those kinds of things. So by June 1st, I'm going to be providing you all with the link to the current website. I think it's already in the packet as well. And a spreadsheet to write down all the things that you find that we need to take a look at before we launch to the public. I'm going to the Citizens Advisory Board meeting next Wednesday, and we'll be giving them instructions as well. So hopefully we can get some really great eyes on our new site and get some really great feedback, because it's just been us, and the more you do it, the more you just think it's the same, and you're good to go. But we really need some fresh eyes on the site with different perspectives than we have. So stay tuned for more direction, but that's what we'll need from you guys coming soon. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. This has been something that's been on our priority list for quite some time, and it's exciting to see that we'll have a rollout towards the end of the summer. So please keep an eye out for the new website. Moving on to item number 3, I believe we have Police Chief Bowe.
He'll be providing an update on our implementation efforts as it relates to SB 6002. Thank you, Chief.
Apologize, I'm gnawing on a piece of gum over here. Clicker for me. Good afternoon, evening, Mayor, Council, members of the public and staff. Tonight we're going to go through an update on Senate Bill 6002 and its implementation. Well, okay. A little bit about the purpose of our presentation tonight. Our goal tonight is to provide the council and community with an update on Senate Bill 6002, as well as automated license plate reader systems here in our city. On February 12th, 2026, a couple months ago, gave you all a presentation. One of your requests was that I get a transparency portal on the website. It's a service of Flock. And then the other request was that after the legislative session, I come back and give you an update on any implementation as a result of the legislative session or legislative process. So, I want to talk a little bit about when a new bill gets passed, a little bit about what that looks like on my end. So, I probably should actually go back even before a new bill gets passed. We work a lot with police chief organizations around the state and with our legislators. When they have an idea for a bill, they typically write a draft, and then they send it to us, and we work back and forth to point out, like, this is something we can totally do. This causes these problems. And throughout the time, a bill changes dramatically over the course of a legislative session, especially one when we're talking things like automated license plate readers, where there's very dynamically opposed positions on the technology. And what we want to do is make sure that we're listening to legislative positions and that we're making sure that we're listening to prosecution decisions, court decisions, and other people in the room to make sure that we have a workable product at the end. So the process actually starts before the bill gets through. Once it gets through, then we work with our legal advisor. We work with in this case, our product suppliers. We work with Lexipol, who actually is a third-party company of attorneys that writes our employee policies. So all of our police officer policies are written by a third-party vendor. We work with our public disclosure team. We work with community planning. We work with all of the entities throughout the city. And then I work a lot with the state agencies. So as you guys know, I'm the president of the King County Police Chief and Sheriff's Association. So we work collectively as a group of police chiefs to say, how are you implementing this? What's your legal advisor saying on this? To try to make sure that all of our policies are generally aligned. And then I also work a lot with WASPIC. So at the state level, I'm your King County representative, and then there's a state organization of police chief and sheriffs. And in that role, I also am a party of that organization. So we work at the state level as well to make sure that we're all understanding and applying the policies inconsistent with the state law, and also working with people like the Attorney General's office as they're working on model policy to make sure that we have kind of a shared understanding of what we think the bill means, what our attorneys think the bill means, what they think the bill means, so that we come up with a product that actually achieves what everybody's trying to get at. I always want to talk a little bit about the history. One of the questions that comes up is ALPR, like, this came out of nowhere. And I really think it's important that we talk about how many times this has been discussed. Just a moment ago, we were talking about the search feature in the website. If you go in there and type FLOC, which is our automated license plate reader, you will come up with like 75 or 80 different times. This has been openly discussed in public forum by myself, previous chiefs, 3 previous chiefs, council members, public safety emergency management meetings. This has been brought up repeatedly and discussed in public forum, and a lot of these discussions have been had over the years. So I think a lot of people maybe didn't hear all those discussions at the time, but the discussions occurred, and you can look back historically and watch the videos on the beautiful new website of those previous meetings. Ultimately, our city in November 20th of 2022 signed an agreement for 16 pole-mounted cameras, an ALPR system with the FLOC company. And we do not have any of the mobile systems. So there's also a feature or a system within FLOC that's mounted on the front of a police car. We don't have any of those in our city, but sometimes when you hear about conflicts with the system, part of it comes down to the complexity of that particular technology, because it's much harder to control what images are taken from a moving police car than it is what images are taken from a known fixed point. So some of the challenges people are having is implementing the mobile component. We don't have any of those in our system. We have no mobile systems. So first things first, Transparency Portal is live. It was live within 3-4 weeks of the meeting. It took us a little bit longer than we expected to get it live, but it is now live. And really what this does is just tells you how many cameras we have in the system, who we share our information with, our policies are on there. It just gives you just a basic snapshot. You also can go through and pull a PDF of the searches of our system. So you will get a search record of our system to see who has made a search of our system. I will tell you the information is super, super generic, and that is intentional. If we give really detailed information and you are somebody with ill intent, it gives you a lot of clues. Like, if Spokane Police Department is looking for a vehicle in Des Moines related to a homicide and you live in Des Moines and just committed a homicide in Spokane, this would be really important information for you as a suspect in a crime. So there is a little bit of autonomy put into that where it has like user ID numbers instead of like department names. On the administrative end, I can actually see that information, but on the front portal, some of it is anonymized to some extent just to make sure that we don't deal with integrity of investigation issues on the back end. So House Bill 6002 was negotiated. There was a lot of energy in this bill. As you've heard from your lobbyists, a lot of back and forth, a lot of changes. It was finally signed on the 31st of March by the governor, and it did have an emergency clause. So this bill didn't have a delay. It went into effect immediately upon its signature. And yeah, it was signed on the 30th. I apologize. It went into effect immediately on the 30th. So high level, some of the things that came out of this bill. One of the things they really focused on is where the cameras are to make sure that they were serving their intended purpose without having the unintended consequences. So they really looked at locations where the cameras are and what the camera can see is a key component. Of the system. And really what they were looking at is making sure the camera doesn't hit the listed areas, and they very clearly defined them. These were negotiated throughout the process of the bill, and I know that sometimes even in here I've heard people talking about which cameras are acceptable and not acceptable. The bill is crystal clear on exactly what the acceptable locations are, and it spells them out in great detail. So it's important to look at the bill and look at the words in the bill, because the state was very clear on what they wanted protected, not protected. There are a lot of people who have different personal opinions about what that means. The bill is very clear on what that means. So here in our city, we had 16 cameras in our original contract. When I talked to you in May of 2025, we actually decommissioned one of the cameras that was never installed. One of the first 16 cameras that was intended, the location where we were going to put it in didn't work well because of technical issues. And eventually we just decided it didn't make sense to continue trying to force a round peg into a square hole. And we actually decommissioned one of the cameras before it was ever installed. So we had a network of 15 cameras. When this bill came into effect, we looked at it and we asked Flock to review all of our cameras. I asked Assistant Chief Stanton to review all of our cameras, and then I asked Matt in our legal department to review all of our cameras. Independently, all of them came to the same answer. There are 2 cameras in our city that don't meet the current statutory regulations. One of them, you can see the entry or driveway to a protected medical facility. It's a pharmacy that sells the morning after pill, which meets the statutory definition. And the other one can see the driveway of a place of worship, which is a protected facility as well. None of our other cameras violate the current law as it's written. And again, very specific. The buildings, locations they identified, and the parking lots of those locations are the protected locations. It doesn't spread out to broader spectrum. It is those specific locations. So at current, we have 13 cameras active. Go back one slide. And what this is actually my administrative screen. And you can see in there right now we have 13 active cameras. We have decommissioned. The other ones are not active. 1 fully decommissioned. 2 of them are completely offline until we find a legal location for them. I think we're going to be able to move 1 of them. The other one, I'm not sure. We may actually end up with a 14-camera system because we might have to fully decommission one. We're having a hard time finding a location that doesn't. Moving it this way creates a different issue, and moving it that way creates an issue. So we're seeing if we can work through that or not. No, I'm good. Thank you. So within this bill is not just a camera placement bill. It is a big, thick, complicated packet, and this is the negotiation part of the bill that made a 2-page bill into about a 20-page bill by the time it was done, which is actually pretty common in Olympia as we're trying to get everybody's interests met within the bill. So one of the big things this bill did was really looked at making sure that we are as transparent as humanly possible and using the Attorney General's office as a mechanism or a vehicle for a lot of that transparency. So you'll see the Attorney General referenced a lot of times here, and that's because people were trying to figure out how do we make the system effective? How do we limit the abuse of the PDR system? How do we find these balances? And most people found the Attorney General was a fairly trusted medium for both law enforcement, the public, and for the legislators, that if we can put everything to them, have them audit, that provides kind of a safe location for everybody. So the Attorney General's office, we have to register all of our cameras with them within 180 days. This is one of these interesting things with legislation. I would register them right now. There's no secret. There's no portal. So people say, well, have you registered them? No, I would love to. There's just no portal yet. The Attorney General's office needs time to create these mechanisms, because once a legislator says, go forth and conquer, the systems aren't necessarily in place. So the delay is not based on anybody's willingness or lack of willingness. It's about making sure the systems get put in place. What is a little bit interesting about this bill is that the bill actually has an emergency clause, though, that says we have to come into compliance with all of the components of the bill on the day it's signed. So things like this create a little bit of a weird gray area. So as we've been talking as police chiefs, one of the things we're all going to do is actually write a written notification letter to the Attorney General's office and say, hey, I understand your portal's not up yet. We just want to make sure that you understand these are the things we have in our community. This is where they're located. This is the type of contracts we have. Just to put the front end out there that there's no confusion that we're holding any information back. So most of the police chiefs in the state think that that's a valid idea, and obviously I'll go along with that as well. Data retention was immediately turned to 21 days. All records are purged after 21 days unless they're held for a valid criminal investigation. Our policies have already been updated for both legal and PDR. So one of the things this bill changed was a lot of the public disclosure requests to prevent the misuse of images from public disclosure requests of the system. So we've already modified our policies to make sure that we're current on that. Model policy. So it's another one of these things where the Attorney General's office is going to drive this train, but they need time to actually build and implement the policies. So they gave a grace period for the model policy. Model policy is to be completed in the Attorney General's office by July 1 of 2027. So there's not a model policy for me to comply right now. I have to comply with Washington state law as it's written. The model policy will be more restrictive probably than the Washington state law, but until there's a model policy, I don't know what the Attorney General is going to do with that. So we look at the state law, we send it to our attorneys at Lexipol, our attorneys in-house, and make sure we're compliant with everything that is currently known in the system, and that's where we stand today. I would expect that it will have some change under model policy, but part of the negotiation is by creating good policy, often the Attorney General or the AG's office will look at that and go, that's pretty good policy. We're going to actually steal that. And we've seen that with a lot of stuff like pursuit policy. In many cases, the AG's policy actually copied pursuit policies of law enforcement, where we, with good faith, said, we are trying to read this bill and do what we can to be compliant with the intent of the legislator. A couple other things that really come into this. This is about this AG trust thing. We are awaiting model policy, but the AG ultimately is going to be the source of audits. We're going to have to be audited routinely by the Attorney General's office. Those audits will be required to be placed on our transparency portal here, as well as the AG's office will create a transparency portal on their end. So you'll be able to see the audits locally on our webpage. You'll also be able to see statewide audits on the state's page, and they'll be publicly shared on both forums, as well as policies. So any policy change, current policy has to be published on our website, and on the AG's website, I would speculate. Any change in policy has to be published on our website, not only that the new policy, but also a notification that there's a change in policy, so there's community awareness that we've changed a policy within our system. And then some other stuff that we've kind of already worked through. We have to add case numbers and reason for search. Reason for search was already on there, but now it has to have a specific case number. One of the restrictors in searches is that searches have to be tied to a gross misdemeanor or felony investigation. So we now have to add the case number associated with that specific thing. You can't just say generically drug investigation. You have to say we are investigating this narcotics case under this case number. It has to be very specifically aligned with a case. And then training internally. Obviously, there's a ton of new training for officers to make sure they're compliant. And then we already are storing our records with what we believe is going to be the audit criteria in 2027. Because as I said, the bill says there's all this stuff that you're going to have to do in the future. But it also has an emergency clause that puts it into effect today. So what we're doing is just starting the audit train, presuming that there is no grace period in our record keeping and auditing system. So we're just putting all those into effect now. I also want to hit something on the bottom here. This has come up a couple times. I think it's kind of important. I have it in small print, but people always say, well, what if you just copy stuff on your computer, Chief? Who's going to know? Well, there's a couple things with that. One, my computer is very easy to publicly disclose to take records on from IT internally. The other thing is it's a gross misdemeanor for me to do that. Any misuse of an image, storing, distribution, capturing, it is a criminal offense for me to do that. So the implication would be that I would commit a crime by doing that, which after 29 years, I don't plan to start now, and certainly not in saving an image. Next. And then last slide before questions here. One of the things I think is important in this is that this is not your PD doing this. This is a bunch of people working together to make sure that we are coming up with best policy, that we have adequate training, that Kent and Renton and us and Spokane, we're all working together on our training policies to say, hey, did your training have this piece in it? I think this section of the bill might be missing in your training. So we are all working collectively on this. Lexipol is a series of attorneys that write our policies. They're a series of attorneys out of California that we contract with. All of our policies are reviewed by Lexipol to comply with all current Washington state law, so verifying that we are indeed compliant. And like I said, we're trying to implement as much of this up front, knowing full well that this grace period kind of appears to be a gray area, but we don't want to take it as a gray area. Rather, we want to implement all known policies now to be prepared when we get a model policy that says, hey, Chief, did you do this? Instead of playing catch up as much as we possibly can. And I think that is the last slide. And with that, I'm available for any questions. Again, I didn't cover all of ALPR FLOC. I think we've talked about this on 3 or 4 presentations now. But this is specific about the House bill you asked me to follow up on and the transparency portal items. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. Yeah, you also give great presentations.
Is it top 3 though? I heard top 3.
You're not in the top. No, I saw you gave a fireworks presentation I stumbled on, and I was like, wow, this is my shopping list, baby. You know, no, it was fantastic. I use the metaphor of Instagram in that this is irresistible to people for obvious reasons. People want to feel safe and so on, and the downstream stuff is going to be 5, 8 years, and I won't argue. We voted for it, and I was there and everything. But the only thing in what you've said is the people there, and you have to admit it's pretty rare that you get people with signs and so on. They mentioned 5 cameras being out of compliance, and you've seemed to have counted for 2. Do you have an understanding, and this is a real question because I don't, what is it about the other 3 that they find, and if could that be sort of put down like in a paragraph or 2? Because I'm really unclear, and the whole discussion is so 0 or 100 that I would like to get that. If you've talked with them and you have an understanding of what the objection is, I would take that offline or whatever.
Well, I'll put it out here. I try to be very neutral on this. This is about state law. This is about best practice. Yeah. This is about policy. I also try not to be confrontational with members of the public.
No, I'm just...
In this case, so I actually want to point out, it's actually been said multiple times that it has to do with school bus routes, and those are not included anywhere in the bill. So some of the things being said about this, some of the things being published about this are not necessarily included in the black and white, which is what we're legally held to and the standard we're held to. It is what people wish it said. It maybe is where things were before a bunch of negotiation, but the written language is on the property of the location, able to see the entrance of a parking lot immediately adjacent connected to the facility listed. That is the exact, I think I'm quoting that correctly from the verbiage. So a bus route, while maybe not ideal, is not actually prohibited or in this bill. So my speculation is that's what's that case. I have offered access to both myself and the system to some of the people. So
if we could talk one at a time. Thank you.
No, these are my questions. Thank you. If you object to the way that we're dialoguing, please feel free to. The other question I have is, I've asked before, you mentioned city policies. Are they written down? Is there like a PDF regarding, I have no doubt you will comply with the law and you're not going to give up your, all that stuff. But I read the bill, and it is convoluted, Section 3, Section 4, and everything. And it read to me like people can download images for limited use cases. And does the city have a written policy on that? And if so, could I receive a copy of that? Because it's really, I hope you'll agree, it's really convoluted, the list of use cases.
Yeah, and I want to, Section 10 of the actual bill, if you go to Senate Bill 6002, it specifically says any person willfully or intentionally retains, sells, shares, permits access, disseminates automated license plate reader data or an audit trail is guilty of a gross misdemeanor. So what you're saying is actually a crime. It is a crime for me to retain. It is a crime for anybody. So I understand what you're saying, but the implication is one of your officers is committing a criminal act. And in that case, we have a whole different issue which falls under our internal investigation policies and ultimately criminal charge and termination. The officers are fully aware, and we even have our roll call training template here of what that looks like.
Any image between after 21 days, any image that you download or you have, the officer has, that it's gone. From your local computer as well as the web server.
I'm going to interject because I believe you answered that. Unless it's tied to a specific criminal investigation, it cannot be held.
That is correct. We can't download them unless they're part of an investigation, and then they're uploaded in our record management system, our RMS, and associated with the case for which they're being drawn.
Okay, but what if the case...
Councilmember Harris, can I move on to some other folks since you've had 3 questions here? I'll come back to you for your second bite. Councilmember Steinmetz.
And the images that we were just talking about that are retained past the 21 days would be required under criminal laws of discovery that you retain those and discover them in the course of that case, correct?
That's correct. They actually are still exempt from public disclosure, which is interesting, but they are not exempt from disclosure for criminal cases. So a generic person couldn't get it. That would be illegal, but obviously their criminal defense attorney would have access as well as the prosecutor.
So, and that's a due process right that everybody who's accused of a crime gets.
Yes, we're a Bill of Rights here. Yep.
My job. Good presentation, and I appreciated it. The primary issue is that we need to make sure we're in compliance. There seems to be a little bit of, are you open to somebody saying, hey, I'm not sure this is in compliance, and informing the public if they want to send you an email saying something, or do we do that through legal, or what's the best way for them to find out if they think they've got something?
Yeah, so I am an open book. You guys know this. Anybody can email me anytime about anything. One of the things that we don't do is a lot of times people will ask us to create records for things they're fishing for. We don't create records or do studies for people. We do studies for our city manager. We don't do studies for random questions online. So that's the only thing I would ask, that if you go on to legal and say, I want the city to do this thing for me, we don't have to go do a study for a public disclosure request. We have to have a record for something we've already done. Other than that, I think it's 99 times out of 100 easier just to send me an email and ask me, and I'm more than glad to answer and take screenshots and give you what you want.
So the camera at X location, there's a concern whether it's in compliance, they should let you know.
Yeah, and on my February 12th presentation, I actually put up an image of a detailed map of where all the cameras are, where they face on that date.
I remember that. So,
yes, sir.
Thank you. And then, of course, the other reason for, and I appreciate you working so hard to get in compliance as much as you can right now, is because obviously this is important to a lot of people.
Agreed.
And, you know, we need to be responsive to that. And I think that's, you know, a really good reason to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Bloss.
Chief, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for being proactive in complying with the new Senate bill. Can you go over the public records disclosure that it's not allowed in any circumstance? The city has gotten a public records request in the past on flock camera data. That would not be allowed anymore then?
That's correct, and I might ask Tim to help me here. I'm pretty good at this, but if I say something wrong, kick me under the table, boss. No, so the actual images are no longer able to be delivered under public disclosure, and really what that has to do is a loophole people are trying to close, with people being able to abuse the public disclosure system to get a bunch of images and then use them for separate sale, which is why they made it a gross misdemeanor to capture or retain, and so people couldn't create a secondary system with images crafted through public disclosure. So they put a lot of restrictions on the release of images and instead use the audit train system as a way to verify appropriate use of the images. So anytime somebody searches the image, we have to audit it on our end and register that both with the public and with the Attorney General's office. Did I correctly say that?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of the authorized purposes is to provide real-time traffic information to the public, traffic modeling, and traffic studies. I don't remember when you showed us the demo. Is that something you have? It could be useful data for the city to have. I don't know if you can see kind of traffic patterns in your flock system.
Yeah, so I think that is actually about the bill saying they're okay with the use of automated license plate readers for the purposes of those. Flock does not specifically do traffic modeling.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
This is just for what it's worth. When we originally voted on it, some of the public heartburn is earned. The previous, when they were originally deployed, we were not exactly, you know, when you say we did not have a web page, let's put it that way. Okay, it was considered better to just keep them kind of vaguely, not private, but just sort of not, you know, just not, we didn't advertise it, let's say. And when you kind of do that over time, it makes people start to look. And so I always tell, you know, advise just being just straightforward about stuff in front, and then people don't get curious and so on. And a lot of this comes from people being just so, take all of this as just part, the price of maybe something that you did not earn, sir. Thank you.
And I will say that you hit one of my core philosophies, which is transparency. It's way easier just to be transparent up front. It actually resolves a lot of this. Several people in the room have had multiple demos, have seen the system, and also have been part of a lot of hard conversation about what do you like about this as we've been going through the bill. So my police advisory group has done a great job of really working with us to say, hey, Chief, I don't like this, or my neighbor has this question. So it's not just transparent here, it's also transparent out as far as working with people to actually create policy that's community driven. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I know under our contract with Flock, we actually own the data.
That's correct.
But it's stored on a server somewhere else. What can we do to ensure the public that Flock is in compliance with deleting that data after 21 days? And what's the implications if they don't?
Well, the implications is they are actually specifically the companies, and I want to, you mentioned Flock, which is a provider of this service. There are hundreds of companies that are ALPR companies. We just have a contract with Flock. So any of those companies that would not follow Washington state law, there's actually criminal ramifications for the company, and there's civil ramifications, which is interesting that one of the areas for which public disclosure is acceptable is for civil litigation purposes. So again, talking about the court system can actually get data and records specifically utilized for criminal or for civil mitigation of misuses of the system. So I think that is where you would see a punishment to a company would be massive civil litigation if they chose not to follow Washington state law, particularly as it relates to privacy.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you very much.
All right, last but not least, to wrap up this jam-packed city manager's report, I'd like to invite Tyler Beakley, our SWIM manager, to provide our annual Recology update. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm just introducing this item, so thank you. We get to talk about garbage, also referred to as solid waste. I think it's really important now that we're a few years into our new contract with Recology that we come back to council annually to just check in. How is our contract going? Also, as a reminder to what amenities to the public are in our new contract, and as well to brief new council members on just what is inside this Recology contract, as it can be confusing as there's a lot of information. So without further ado, I'll introduce Alyssa Campbell with Recology to give the presentation.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I just want to say I find it very appropriate that I get the pleasure of doing this presentation during Public Works Appreciation Week, just because it's a great pleasure working with your staff here at Des Moines. We're very lucky to get the opportunity to work with them, and they definitely support us a lot on the day-to-day aspect of collecting trash, recycling, and compost in your city. So let's get into it. Again, my name is Alyssa Campbell. I'm our Government and Community Relations Manager at Recology King County. And looking forward to talking with you today about our contract in the City of Des Moines and also some highlights from 2025. So again, through this presentation, we'll talk about some of the contract benefits and service features. In addition to that, some of the community engagement and waste zero or waste diversion opportunities that we have in the city. We'll go over some of the diversion statistics and highlights, specifically through the Recology Highline store that Des Moines residents make frequent use of. And we'll also talk about outreach to multifamily and commercial sites, especially as it relates to Washington state laws that have been recently passed. And then, of course, we'll do an overview of 2025. So some background on the solid waste process and kind of Recology's relationship with Des Moines over the years. We actually started service in the city in 2010. At that time, or briefly prior to that time, the city conducted a competitive RFP process in which Recology ultimately ended up being awarded the contract. The next time we had the opportunity to talk about service in the city of Des Moines, kind of revisit that contract, was in 2022. So we renegotiated the contract with the city of Des Moines, kind of beefed up the version of the contract that we had and made it up to date with what the current industry standards are and needs in the city of Des Moines were. So that's a 10-year contract that will expire on October 31st, 2033. This contract covers collection services for garbage, recycling, and compost pickup across the city, in addition to a lot of other unique service features that we will talk about today. So in this presentation, we've distilled 3 main categories of the contract. However, there's a lot more that we do for the city of Des Moines outside of just this, or really that the contract covers outside of just these highlights, so I just want to call that to mind. But the first one is diversions and service offerings. So with the new contract, we offer an expanded recycling service capacity for commercial multifamily properties. We offer a free on-call curbside cleanup for residents. We also provide free kitchen compost pails, which are available at the Public Works building here in Des Moines and also available at the Recology Highline store. Speaking of the Highline store, we've got access for residents there, and not only do they have access to the Highline store, but it's really any Recology store across King County. So let's say you live in Des Moines, but you happen to visit another city frequently, and we've got a Recology store there. You can also make use of that store. We also provide 2 special drop-off collection events annually for the city of Des Moines. With the new contract, some of the impacts to operations that we had were new collection vehicles, so the most fuel efficient for a current standard were brought into the city to replace the ones that we had previously. We've also got a provision in the contract about support vehicles needing to be EVs, so we've kind of phased that in over time as well. So that's examples of that would be deliveries vehicles that provide carts, new carts to folks, or a vehicle that our supervisor uses to kind of monitor operations in the field, that sort of thing. We have also increased operational support staff, so just across the board, increased headcount, and that's with the new Des Moines contract, but that's also just, Recology kind of growing as a company over the years. A few quick improvements that I'll just mention that we've had since the new contract's gone into effect that do impact Des Moines is artificially intelligent robots added to our MRF, which is really exciting. It helps us capture more data at our MRF, stands for Material Recovery Facility. I apologize, lots of acronyms in the solid waste industry, as you can imagine. So we have robots there that have been added, and those help us capture data. They help us capture as much material as possible. It helps us reduce contamination. That's an improvement that we've decided to make as a company here in King County. And then also we've opened a new North Yard, so that's up in the town of Maltby. That's expanded our ability for maintenance on our fleet just across King County. It's also added some operational efficiencies for us. We've now internalized the function for container cosmetic repairs, so that's helpful for Des Moines because we deliver dumpsters in Des Moines, and now we can paint them in-house, which is great. Last thing I'll just mention on this slide is customer service and outreach. So with the new contract, or with the most up-to-date contract with Des Moines, we have a full-time dedicated customer service representative. We have increased Waste Zero support. What does Waste Zero mean? That's our education outreach team that provides assistance to businesses, multifamily properties. They go out and table in the community and talk to residents one-on-one about what's recyclable, what's compostable, what service features they may not be aware of. I also mentioned our Recology store. Beyond allowing folks to do customer service requests, billing requests, and drop off hard to recycle items, I'm kind of going ahead here. We'll talk more about that in the presentation. We also do workshops at the Recology store, so ways for folks to engage on the topic of waste and reducing waste in person for free. And then last thing I'll just quickly mention is enhanced education programs. So we've kind of added more to our approach with educating the public over time, and that's been a benefit in this contract as well. So here are some of the main highlights with the residential service that we provide in Des Moines. We offer a free annual bulky item collection. That means 2 bulky items can be collected curbside at no cost each year, and that could also include 1 cubic yard of material. Just a reminder, 1 cubic yard is 3 feet by 3 feet. And then Christmas tree collection, all single-family and multifamily residences can get their Christmas trees picked up on an annual basis. We do storm debris collection after a city-designated storm event. So the city decides that they want to use the service after a storm occurs, and we're able to pick up extra yard waste for 2 weeks following that event. And then I mentioned before, we've got free kitchen compost pails available at the Public Works Engineering Building and at the Highline store. We do an on-call special item pickup, so you can pick up the phone, call our customer service team, and at no cost, we'll pick up fluorescent bulbs, batteries, motor oil, small appliances, styrofoam, and other materials right from your house. We also do a free backyard service, so if you're unable to bring your cart to the curb for collection, our driver will actually walk up to your home and retrieve that and service it and bring it right back. There is also a senior and low-income discount offered for residents, and we've expanded customer service hours as well. So 7 to 7 during the week and 8 to 5 p.m. during the weekends. In this slide, we talk a little bit about the service features that have been added with the contract, and then also just some highlights for 2025. So we've got new fuel-efficient collection trucks, like I mentioned. We have the support vehicle fleet, which as I mentioned before, is used by our supervisors, is used by our deliveries team, and also our Waste Zeroes team. The Waste Zero support that we provide, it ranges from being really specific, talking about maybe if there's contamination in the recycling or compost bin, contamination being the thing that's not allowed in those bins, usually trash. Providing education there through presentations, technical assistances, and then also seeking new diversion opportunities. So actively looking where a business may have a lot of trash service, and we can work with them to reduce that trash service and enable them to use recycling or compost, hopefully compost as well. In the past year or so, we've hired a new district manager for our region here that encompasses Des Moines. So this new new manager is actually somebody who used to serve as a supervisor for Des Moines. So she's been really great. She's got really great contacts for the city of Des Moines and surrounding area, and she now oversees a supervisor that supports this region. So we're feeling very good about our leadership that we've got on the operations side here in Des Moines. We've also, I mentioned previously, increased our customer service staffing. So not only is that included with that aspect in the Des Moines contract where we've got somebody who's dedicated to the city, but also we've just increased headcount over time, just recognizing trends in customer service data and just anticipating different points when we might expect to receive more calls and emails. And I also mentioned previously we launched that North Hauling Yard, and that was officially as of December 2025, January 26. A quick overview of the customer service data that we have from this past year. As you can see here, there's somewhat of a pattern of volume in calls and emails. These tend to mirror our billing cycles, so the residential cycle in Des Moines is kind of following this if you trail it back from December, September, June, March. Those are kind of our big months that we really do expect to see a lot of calls and emails. But over time, there may be other things that add to that. We did have a billing system update that happened at the very end of 2025, so that did contribute to the larger spike that we saw in December. In the summer months, we tend to get more calls and emails just because people go on vacation. We have also in this past year had some route assignment shifts, so that tends to drive some more calls as well. But ultimately in 2025, we rendered an average score in the city of Des Moines, customer satisfaction score of 4.7 out of 5. And that's a voluntary score that we get. Any resident or business that calls us, they can provide that after they kind of work with our team. So we're happy about that score. And then, like I mentioned quite a few times now, Waste Zero is a key component of what we do at Recology, and that we're grateful to be partners with Des Moines on. At any given point, we, by referral and also kind of out of our own volition, will be working with sites to provide assistance. I mentioned before, there's, contamination issues that we run into, recycling and compost service not being used correctly. And then there's also opportunity for diversion. So how do we do that? We work with property managers, we work with maintenance staff, we'll work directly with tenants and employees. We provide signage, multilingual signage, custom signage even, laminated. We'll do signage and enclosures. We'll do internal signage, all sorts of things to make sure that we can help reduce waste. I'm just noticing a reusable bag in the crowd here, which I love. We also do door-to-door multifamily outreach. So I mentioned those kitchen top compost pails. We'll provide those door-to-door. We love it when property managers will allow us to do so. A lot of times we need to get that yes in order to work on site. So we try really hard to make that happen. We also provide Recycle Right bags. So that's the blue bag that you see on the screen there. It's meant to reduce plastic bag contamination in the recycling bin. That's a common one that we see. We also have a door hanger called the Recycle Right door hanger, which gives the basic how-tos on recycling. There's some other things that we run into in multifamily properties in particular, like hazardous waste and bulky items, so that flyer helps educate folks on that as well. I mentioned previously we've got some legislation that's passed in Washington, so there's 3 organics management laws that have passed in the last 4 years or so. Implications that has on businesses is food service businesses are required under the law to have compost service. As of January 1st this year, anybody who's generating 96 gallons of food waste per week, they really got to have that service. So we've been working hard on providing that, kind of bolstering that message that's gone out from the state, from the county, and from Des Moines to make sure those businesses are aware, and we give businesses the tools. And ultimately, in using a compost service and reducing the garbage bill, they save money. It's a very environmentally positive thing for them to do, hence why the laws were passed. So we work really hard on helping thread the needle there. Few other things that we do here in Des Moines. We have MRF tours. So again, the recycling facility. We allow the public and private entities to come out to our MRF. Just this past month, actually, we had Des Moines staff out to take a look at how things are going at the MRF, and that's always an open invite that we have. And then we're also active in the community. One of our favorite events or favorite programs to sponsor is the Des Moines Dollars for Scholars. We've been providing sponsorships for years now, just because there's so much great work here in Des Moines to support the youth, and we love being a part of that. So the Recology store I mentioned, it's a great opportunity for residents. We always want people to go out there because it's such a great service for reducing waste, and I've got some statistics I'm so excited to share about Des Moines here. But at the store, there's a whole range of different kinds of items that can be dropped off for recycling. It ranges from styrofoam, light bulbs, electronics, textiles, small appliances, even bikes. We'll take batteries, so many different items, and we do get them from Des Moines residents. So as you can see, in 2025, we had more than 2,000 hard-to-recycle drop-offs, which is great. People are really making use of that store, and we want them to continue to do so. Very, very impressive to almost have diverted nearly 11,000 gallons of styrofoam from the landfill. That's incredible, and that's just from Des Moines in that 1 year. So in addition to being able to drop off hard-to-recycle items, customers can also pay their bill. They can ask customer service questions. They can get their requests fulfilled, and they can actually ask about what goes where too. So the workshops that we do are one tool that we draw people in to explain how to use service correctly, but it's also kind of a way to think beyond the bin. So we do a sustainable gift wrapping workshop. So furoshiki workshop is what that is, and we use reused textiles. We do a scissor repair workshop, and we do a mending workshop, so ways to kind of continue use of items that people already have. And kind of in conclusion, looking forward to 2026, I can't believe that we're already halfway through 2026. I could probably even talk about halfway through what we've done this year. But just a few events to look out for that we will be at, and then other programs that will be continuing. We will be at the Des Moines Farmers Market through the summer and into the fall. We're very excited to join in the fun for Shark in the Park in July. We'll also continue our programs for schools, multifamily, and commercial sites, and that's especially in support of the organics management laws that have passed, but just generally speaking, we want to continue to help move the needle with reducing waste in the city. And then there's also a really big law that's been passed just this past year called the Recycling Reform Act, you may have heard of. That law is just now in the early phases of implementation. Recology is on the advisory council for this law being implemented, so we are an active stakeholder, kind of working with the City of Des Moines and neighboring cities just to help make sure this law passes in a way that's positively impactful for everybody. And you will definitely be hearing more about that through the years and as it gets closer to a point where it's really, you're going to see the impacts. And then the other big thing that happens every single year is our annual service guide. So we will mail that out in November to, again, remind folks about the services they have here in Des Moines, in addition to all the other aspects of service for 2027. And with that, I will take any questions. And again, I appreciate your time.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. Yeah, how are things going at the MRF? My question really is, are there any stats as to how just the total tonnage or whatever it is, yardage, year on year that is being processed? Are we more or less and so on?
Yeah, so I couldn't give you the total number right off the bat right now, but we do have it. On a daily basis, the MRF itself processes about 350 tons per day, and that is, we have room for more. So we're constantly trying to increase that number. We're permitted for more tons to come in, but I'm happy to provide you kind of Des Moines tonnage for the annual look back.
Yeah, no, I'm just, if Economics 101 were working, because people have noticed the price increases and so on, one might think or hope that the amount of waste being processed would reduce, but just anecdotally, I just see these things filled to the brim, and I'm just wondering what might be done to actually move the needle on reducing the amount that our residents process, or leave for you to process, I should say.
Yeah.
Just something to think about. Thank you. I look forward to getting that.
Of course.
Councilmember Blas.
Thank you for the presentation. I was in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and every trash bin in the city, in every building, every park, every street has trash, recycling, and compost. We don't do that here in the city. We don't do it in this building, at the marina, and parks. Is that something you can help us implement if we wanted to move in that direction?
I love that question. We are actually working actively with the City of Des Moines right now to implement more recycling receptacles at parks. So that's an ongoing project that the city is in the middle of right now. I can tell you for compost, public compost receptacles, that's a really tricky one. Even the City of Seattle doesn't have public compost receptacles, and the reason for that is because there's such a high level of contamination. So it's often, really, really contaminated with trash. But that's definitely something that we can look into more, and I think gradual implementation of having all three streams just as much as possible across all city sites is absolutely the goal.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for your presentation. I had one more question for you. Folks, I would say that one of the number one emails that we get at City Council is about trash pickup and recycled pickup and yard waste pickup. What can immediately folks do to try and ensure that they are serviced with some sort of regularity or following the instructions better, or what can we do to make sure that those services are coming through for our residents?
Appreciate that question. I would say for a missed collection specifically, and we've got the customer service information here on the screen, we do request that we are notified at least 24 hours or quickly, after it occurs, if that is a question of whether service has been provided. Not only does that help us properly document that something's happened, it also helps us respond quickly. If we have an issue happen more than once at a particular site, the recourse there for us is following up with our operations supervisor to look further into the routing, to look into the site and figure out why are we having a recurring issue. So again, communicating that so that we can properly, move any complaints or issues up the channel is definitely important.
I think one of the things you said there was key. So if you report more than once, because it's happened more than once, it gets escalated right away. So that's something that you encourage folks to do as soon as possible as well.
Yes, we definitely want to know so that we can address it. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. Oh, one more thing.
Sure.
Just two things. Follow up to that, from the staff level, I've been in this role for 5 months now, working with Recology, and I've been just stunned with the responsiveness for any complaints we do receive at the staff level that are escalated or reports that come in directly to staff. They are very responsive and eager to resolve any miscollections. You know, we're not chasing them down, trying to get them to pick up their phone. So I'll just add that as a note. Very happy at the staff level. And then an invitation to our council members. You heard robots, you've heard recycling recovery facility. If there is any interest in a tour, please reach out to the city manager. We're happy to get that scheduled. Also, if there's any interest in seeing the landfill, not as robots there, but yeah, please let AJ or the city manager know, and we'll get that scheduled.
Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate it. All right. Will the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, approval of minutes. Item 3, Des Moines Farmers Market 2026 to 2028 agreement. Item 4, resolution acknowledging completion of the 2024 periodic update. Item 5, North Hill Elementary Walkway Improvement Project condemnation, and that concludes the consent agenda, Mayor.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read? Councilmember Nutting.
So moved, Mayor.
I see a second by Councilmember Steinmetz. Does a councilmember wish to pull any items? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda as read, please raise your right hand until I call your name. Deputy Mayor Oxiger, Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Bloss, and myself. Councilmember Demonis is absent, so that'll be 6-0. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now it's time for some new business items, and I've been handed a secret note that's not really that secret, that our residential conversions ordinance first reading will be given a staff presentation by Land Use Planner Alicia Jacobs. Come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'm Alicia Jacobs, Land Use Planner 1 for the city, and we'll be going over residential conversions. So what is HB 1042? It's recent state legislation that passed in 2023, and we're required to update our code by June 30th, 2026. The purpose is to explore converting existing buildings to residential uses. Notable requirements, the list appearing, we'll go through them in a couple minutes, but the most notable one is that we must allow additional housing units in all locations that permit mixed use or residential, except for ground floor commercial or retail that's along major pedestrian corridors. What are residential conversions? It means the conversion of a building or portion of a building that is vacant or occupied by a non-residential use to a residential use. And here we have some examples that we pulled from other cities. So for the draft ordinance, we added the definition for residential conversions. For zoning, we updated the permitted uses table for residential conversions. In this map, it's everything that's in that dark purple color. Represents where residential conversions are allowed. So this includes the following zones: neighborhood commercial, institutional campus, community commercial, downtown commercial, highway commercial, Pacific Ridge commercial, transit community zone, and Woodmont commercial. We excluded single-family zones because they already allow mixed use, and we also excluded the BP zone, business park zone, because it does not allow residential or mixed-use development. For general standards, for minimum compliance with HB 1042, it includes the following. For the purpose of this section, existing building means a building that received a certificate of occupancy at least 3 years prior to the permit application to add housing units. Existing buildings may be permitted to convert to residential uses, provided their certificate of occupancy was issued a minimum of 3 years prior to their building permit application, and the proposal shall comply with all health and safety standards. For development standards, for minimum compliance, its existing nonconformities like setbacks, building coverage, impervious coverage, etc., can't be a justification for denial of a building permit. We must allow conversions to have a 50% density increase above what is permitted in the underlying zone. Parking for new converted units cannot be required. However, cities can require retention of existing parking for residential and non-residential uses. And we cannot impose design standards beyond those generally applicable to the underlying zone. We must allow additional housing units in all locations except for ground floor commercial or retail that's along a major pedestrian corridor, and transportation and environmental studies are not required, and emergency housing and transitional housing uses are exempt from the development standards of the chapter. And we have a suggested motion.
We're happy to answer any questions you have.
Right. Council, do you have any questions? Please, questions only. Councilmember Harris.
I was intrigued by the limitation on first floor along like major, would that preclude some, anything along Pacific Highway? Or,
I would have to, Tommy says yes. I would have to check with the transportation program, but Tommy's nodding yes, so I would say yes.
That just, okay, that just seems like an interesting curve. Okay.
That one may change. There is a separate law that may override that with a separate versus conversion, where full residential may be allowed under the transit-oriented development code that we'll have to look at in a couple of years. So even if it is a priority pedestrian, we may have to require full multifamily in that zone in the future.
Okay. No, I lived in New York, and it's sort of a commonality on, allow that, and here we like to do the commercial thing, and even if it's not rented. So anyway, thank you.
Councilmember Simons.
Kind of curious, how much staff time has been put into trying to comply with, let's just limit it to this, this requirement from the state legislature to change the way we zone stuff?
Generally, or this one, or this one? This one was a little bit of a simpler one. I mean, you saw, we were able to fit all of the requirements into 2 slides, so I would say this one had a lot less hours, but there are some that are a lot more complicated. We know transit-oriented development isn't for a couple of years, and we're already doing research and spending many hours. So it really depends on the law. I mean, this one I would say we've probably spent only, a handful of hours from planning commission and then preparation for this, but there's other ones that I've already spent a handful of hours and it hasn't even seen the light of day yet.
And so, sorry, I didn't realize I was undone. So we're just spending an awful lot of time responding to the state legislature and not
absolutely
of the citizens. Thank you.
Is there a motion? Councilmember Nutting.
I move to pass draft ordinance number 26-035 to a second reading on June 11th, 2026.
Second, I see Councilmember Bloss. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call your name. Deputy Mayor Oxiger, Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Bloss, and myself. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to talk about resolution about the Opportunity Zone application. And with us today is going to be Dan Ernessy.
I don't have a large presentation on this. I'll explain a little bit about what the Opportunity Zone is. And hopefully it's pretty self-evident why this is a positive resolution to support. Opportunity zones were put into place in 2016. No, is that right? 2017, I think, was the first year that they were put into place. It was a pilot program to try to move private investment into census tracts with high poverty rates and that needed economic advancement. And it has been successful. It's been bipartisan support for this federal program, and it's been now renewed as a permanent program. There are roughly about 400 qualifying census tracts in Washington State. About 100 of them will get designated as opportunity zones. Des Moines has one qualifying census tract, a Pacific Ridge area, basically between 216th and if I remember right, it's just about 220th, roughly. I'm sorry, 220th, 216th and 200th. On either side of Pacific Highway South, census tracts are notoriously not rectangular, so they kind of meander. But I think this is a great opportunity for layering one more incentive for the private sector to invest in this area. Likely it will be used for multifamily. It can also be used for investing in businesses, but I think it's much more likely from the experience of the first round of the opportunity zone that multifamily housing would be the most likely recipient of that. Sadly, we might not know it ever gets used. There's no direct reason for an investor to report to the local jurisdiction. It's definitely a federal tax income deferment that they are getting. However, we'll try to track those as best we can. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, what's the resolution for? The resolution is to support the application for this census tract to be included.
Questions only, please. Councilmember Bloss.
And then, so it's an application that might not be approved?
That's right. It's ultimately the Governor Ferguson recommends to the federal government which census tracts are eligible from Washington State. And like I said, there's 400 in the state. About, I think it's literally 99 that will be recommended. There's got to be some rural tracts, some tribal tracts, as well as some urban tracts. The census tract in Des Moines does score well. We think we have a compelling application. We're pretty confident, frankly. And I think generally the transition of a new King County executive has kind of left a gap in the King County applications. There's about 80 census tracts in King County alone. And I think we'll have a strong application given that number of census tracts.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Nutting.
I guess I got a two-part question here. So, when will the vote be taken on whether our track has been approved? And then would you come back and deliver another presentation saying that we've been approved for it, or would it just be a council email address?
Probably, let's answer the second one first. Probably just a notification. The actual census tract eligibility wouldn't start until 2027, and the decision is made, I believe, at the end of August. The application is due next week today, so it's time sensitive. There's been a window of 4 weeks to make applications. Cities and counties are scrambling all over the state.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Beyond just stats, what elements go into the application? Is there some pros involved that talks about the wonders of development along, no, I'm just.
There is, yeah, there is. There's definitely an elevator pitch. You're limited to 200 words, and I think the thing that we drew out specifically in this one was the fact that Rapid Ride already went through it, that the city was pursuing TOD rezoning and amplifying the zoning there, that it had recently opened light rail stations, that already, all those things already attract private investment and are indications that the public has been investing in this area. And it's a legitimate one to continue this, designation for private investment.
I just think I think about how that might layer. I mean, this is getting pretty grandiose, but basically, I've seen very successful apartments and things like along a transit route, and then you think about, okay, what's the transition into like BP or, you know, other use cases, like, because there are Indoplexes right behind it, and I'm just like, how do you?
Yeah, how you layer the zoning.
That's the
land use.
And I'm sorry if that's getting too far ahead, but you've answered the question.
Yeah, well, I think big picture, this is one small tool in the overall things that the city of Des Moines can do to encourage redevelopment along Pacific Highway South, which, in my opinion, should be one of the legs of the stool. Whether you have 3 or 4 might be a question, but one of those legs definitely has to be redevelopment along Pacific Highway South.
Money's a big leg. Thank you, sir.
Is there a motion? Councilmember Nutting.
I move to pass draft resolution number 26-050, expressing support for the city's Opportunity Zone application to the Washington State Department of Commerce and authorize the Community Development Director to submit the application.
I've heard a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Oxiger, Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Bloss, and myself passes 6-0. Councilmember Nutting? Do you want to move on to the... Oh, no, wait. Oh, this is on your choice. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll just read it a couple more times. All right. Item number 3, new agenda items for consideration. Now's the time for the purpose of proposing new business items for discussion on a future agenda. Any recommendation will simply need a hand raise from 3 council members. Do any council members have any new business they would like to propose? Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to hear from city staff on where we're at with the turnover of Marine View Drive after 509 is completed from King County. And mainly, my questions is what are we going to do when it becomes our street and not the state street anymore? So, and our asks from the state prior to receiving that as being our street again and maintenance. So.
Well, looks like you got your hand raises. Any other new agenda items? All right. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Now it's time for council member reports, which are limited to 4 minutes. Councilmember Bloss.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
I am going to be missing our next meeting because I will be out of the country. But I just wanted to remind everybody of that, and I hope it all goes well. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I attended the Coho release today, and when I first got involved, we struggled to find volunteers, but this year the turnout was fantastic. Thank you to the city taking video. There were people from Maritime High. Robert Bisorti is the new organizer. Long-timers like Cal. Thank you. people ask questions all the time, and the answers are always, who knows? They release 30,000, and 2 or 3 years they're supposed to come back, and they don't, and we need money to study why. When I first moved here, the fishing was great. It's not, and if it were, the marina would look very different. So hopefully, let's figure it out. The Sustainable Airport Master Plan, near-term projects, State Environmental Policy Act review will be released tomorrow with a 60-day public comment period. I can speak fairly, mildly authoritatively about it because STNI, the group I helped found 10 years ago, follows this thing like real journalism. I encourage the public to comment with the following caveats. Some will tell you that it is too complicated and too long and massive and so on. It is written for airport specialists. People who work in the field go through it like butter. It's not too long. The comment period is not. If it feels intimidating, it might not be your audience. The purpose of public comment is on such a specialized document is for people in the field to provide notes on how to improve or challenge its findings. The reviewer has to evaluate everybody's comments against regulatory requirements. If a bajillion people simply comment saying this stinks, you're not sticking it to the man, you're sticking it to a clerk. And that doesn't mean your input doesn't matter. It just means the quality matters more than quantity, and that should be a relief. And this is my opinion, the best thing you can do is follow a source like STNI. They will be providing a template for comments vetted by professionals, and that advice will be pulled from public sources like the consultants the city hired in 2018. At the time, everybody was all jazzed about changing flight paths, but they also contributed some very good suggestions on Part 150 and noise management, which we kind of ignored at the time, and different crew, maybe we can learn from that. The SAMP began in 2012. We've had 14 years to study up for this. The proposal was made in 2016. It hasn't changed. And I know people felt like, oh my gosh, maybe they didn't believe it because it was 4 years after the third runway. But we have to stop treating it like an ad hoc notion, because this is phase one of a two-phase project. The next one is the long-term project scheduled in 2032. We should stop treating this like an ad hoc deal where we, act like we're the guy who, asked for more time because he didn't study until the night of the test. This will never end, and we should start acting like it. Thank you.
Councilmember Nutting.
Nothing to report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Oxiger.
In view of the time, nothing to report.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. We do have some vacancies on our Citizens Advisory Board. We are looking for folks who would like to volunteer and be a part of that feedback loop and community engagement. I believe all of those are online, and so people can fill those out. People many times ask me if they have to print a piece of paper and fill it out in pen, but no, you can actually fill out an online application, and so please go do that. Thank you so much to Jamie Wagner for being here to talk about the Des Moines Farmers Market. I think the only thing that she left out of that presentation is that our first Farmers Market starts on the 6th, and I hope to see many, many of you there. We are at the end of our meeting. Our next meeting, like was said, will be a Committee of the Whole and study session on June 4th. Is there a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Nutting.
So moved, Mayor.
And I see a second from Councilmember Simons. All those in favor, say aye. 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 Thank you.